It's 900 hours Central Africa time on this Thursday, the 16th of March 2017. Jumbo Africa. And a very warm welcome to the first hour here on Channel 404. This is Newsroom. I'm Elvis Preslin. Now, we will be with you until 12 o'clock. Now, Kendall, today we focus on a very important issue, and that is, of course, Black Sash, which approached the Constitutional Court to exercise oversight over the process to find a new payment provider to pay social grants. Now, a full bench of justices heard the arguments yesterday, proposing the extension of the contract. So the question we posed.
And that's exactly why we're asking you this question. We really want to get your views on it. What do you make of the arguments in the Concourt yesterday on this matter?
We'll also pose that particular question to some of our guests coming in this morning, so you can let us know what's on your mind. But we're also conducting a poll, asking you the very same question, almost similar to that, because we're asking, should the payments of the social grants be done internally by the Department of Social Development? There it is on your screen right now. I'd like to find out from you. Kendall, 132 votes in, eh?
Yes, and 76% say yes, the Department of Social Development should retake the payments and make them internally, because you remember that's what social development used to do before they made Sasa happen.
It's their constitutional duty, we heard yesterday. Sasa says, I do trust SAPO, but we don't have enough to distribute the grants. That's SAPO is the South African Post Office. Otherwise, we're going to experience a stampede at the post office, says Sasa.
Bantu says, Newsroom, what's their role, Kanti? They're supposed to do this themselves. That's their role, to take care of our citizens.
Well, these are some of the comments coming in. This one from Slamulo says, yes, as much as we trust the South African Post Office to deliver our mails, we should also trust them with our social grants. But remember when there's a couple of strikes at the post office and everything falls out of the bandwagon? What then? That's another question. But these are some of the tweets that's coming through. Let us know on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page. But before we get to the news, let's take a look at your news headlines. President Jacob Zuma will today answer oral questions in his first appearance in the National Assembly since his State of the Nation address. Cash Paymaster Services says that today is the latest that any grant deal will be concluded if they are to deliver the service on the 1st of April. And the High Court in Pretoria is set to hear an argument, or urgent application rather, by the former directors and chairperson of the Prasa board, Popo Molefe, to set aside the decision of the Transport Minister, Dipuo Peters, to dissolve the board. Those are your headlines. But before we get there, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Elvis, thank you very much. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in sports today.
It's taken, there we go.
The Proteas throw away the early advantage in Wellington as both Stephen Cook and Dinelga go out on the cheap. And title holder SuperSport United survive an almighty scare against NFT side Royal Eagles to advance in this season edition of the Nedbank Cup.
It's a great finish from Brocky though. Freedom and allowed to get in the header from Bethlehem Tambu. And in towards Bakayoko. It spins again.
Monaco caused the upset of the night as they overturned a 2-goal deficit to knock Manchester City out of the UEFA Champions League. Now, all this and more I've got for you later on in the sports. But first up, let me bring you exactly what's happening top of the news pile. First up, President Jacob Zuma will this afternoon answer oral questions in the National Assembly. It will be President Zuma's first appearance in the House since his State of the Nation address in February. Only the ANC, the DA, the IFP and NFP have been allocated the 6 written questions. Other parties will get an opportunity when it is time to follow up with questions. Following calls for Social Development Minister Bathabile Dlamini to be fired during a snap debate on the social grant payment saga, President Zuma has been asked what he's going to do about her. And in other news, lawyers have proposed that the invalid contract of the Social Development Department with Cash Paymaster Services be extended so grant beneficiaries can be paid on the 1st of next month. The non-profit organization Black Sash approached the Constitutional Court to exercise oversight of the process to find a new payment provider. Yesterday, a full bench of justices heard arguments proposing the extension. Social Development Minister Bathabile Dlamini and the South African Social Security Agency, also known as Sasa, came under fire in the courtroom. Meanwhile, Cash Paymaster Services says today is the latest that any social grant deal can be concluded.
This is a crisis. We must do whatever is necessary to intervene to avoid the proliferation of the crisis.
The state of affairs has never been any clearer. Even the state attorney argued that the sense of crisis is real. Sasa knew since April last year that a storm was coming, while the justices found it baffling that the minister didn't seek to rectify this or inform the court.
Given the somewhat disobedience that we have seen in the past in relation to these matters, the orders and directions not being complied with, will it be appropriate to consider factoring in the rule NISA, calling upon the minister and everybody concerned to show cause why they should not be held in contempt?
But it was the showdown between the justices and the counsel for the minister at Sasa which left many questions.
What explanation do we have from the minister appreciating the enormity of her responsibilities, her constitutional responsibilities, to say this is what happened, this is the briefing that I have insisted on, this was my understanding of the progress made, and this is how I sought to make sure that there isn't a repeat of what happened before?
I can make no submissions on that because the papers do not reveal anything in that connection. When I urged with respect, caution on the court in this regard, is that an inference to be drawn from the absence of information about that, and I accept that it is an inference which could be drawn, is that the minister was utterly supine, which is the implication of the line of questions being put to me. But it is not the only inference. The minister was asked when she became aware that Sasa would not be able to pay by the end of March, and she answered that question. The answer was given in Dr. Magasela's affidavit, and she confirmed the correctness of that affidavit.
The post office disputed that only CPS can offer the service. The company insists that it is complex and has asked the court order that the draft contract, which has increased fees, be signed. A judgment has been reserved.
Now, the High Court in Pretoria is set to hear an urgent application by the former directors and chairperson of the Prasa board, Popo Molefe, to set aside the decision of Transport Minister Dipuo Peters to dissolve the board. Molefe's legal team is expected to argue that the minister's appointment of an interim board is unlawful and preempts the outcome of the case. Popo Molefe's lawyers wrote a letter to the Minister of Transport asking her not to appoint an interim board. However, on Monday, the minister announced the names of the new board members. She cited lack of good corporate governance and the recent public spat between the board and the former acting CEO, Collins Letswalo, as part of her reasons to fire Molefe and other directors. Letswalo's lawyers have now applied to be part of today's proceedings and will ask the court to allow their client to be a respondent in the matter. The legal team representing Molefe is expected to oppose this move. Now, Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe today is expected to officiate at the launch of cement factory PPC in the Masasa area outside Harare. This will be the veteran leader's second public appearance this week. Yesterday, Mugabe chaired the ZANU-PF Politburo at the party's headquarters in Harare. He's expected to leave for Swaziland, where he'll attend the SADC Head of State and Government meeting on Friday. Mugabe will later travel to Mauritius, where he is expected to attend the African Union Foundation Heads of State Conference on the continent's economic and political stability. Now, of course, today, as you heard earlier, we've got a question that we're hoping to be getting responses from you on. And we want to find out from you, what do you make of the arguments in the Concourt yesterday? We'll have a quick look at see what it is that some of you have been saying on social media. First up, I've got Malibongo Manyonyo. Says it seems like the only choice we have now is to extend that CPS contract for 6 months so that people can get their money. Lechasa Batlamolo weighs in with Newsroom. Things are getting worse, but CPS should be given a contract so that 17 million beneficiaries can get their money. And that's where we're going to leave it for now. With all of that, I do know that Elvis is standing by with the most esteemed guest. Elvis?
Thank you, Kendall. And of course, it is a story that's on every South African's mind this morning. The Constitutional Court judges yesterday were left frustrated. Yesterday, when that happened, yesterday, after Social Security Agency SASA and Cash Paymaster Services representatives failed to answer key questions about the social grants payment debacle. Non-governmental organisation Black Sash and other organisations brought the matter to court to seek its intervention into the matter. Now, civil society group Freedom Under Law joined the Constitutional Court application by Black Sash regarding the distribution of social grants. Joining us now this morning is retired Constitutional Court Judge Johan Krichler, that says that they support the relief sought by Black Sash. A very good morning to you, Justin, and welcome.
Good morning to you and good morning to the viewers.
First and foremostly, the current contract between CPS and Sasa was declared unlawful by the Constitutional Court. What are the avenues that are open to the court right now, Judge?
The avenues, as an outside observer, the avenues seem to be fairly limited. The delay on the part of the minister and Sasa, the culpable delay on their part has left themselves and the court with very little option. Quite clearly, for now, to ensure that the many millions who are entitled to the support get their support as of the 1st of April, leaves little choice but to continue with CPS for some time. For how long and on what terms, that's the debate.
Now, as Freedom Under Law joined the Constitutional Court application by Black Sash, what are they actually seeking?
We seek well, first of all, we want to establish the integrity of court orders and court discipline. The separation of powers depends upon the executive obeying and respecting the authority of the courts within their own area. In this particular instance, it was clear to us that the ministry and the agency responsible for the execution of this vital social function had been in disregard, if not contempt, of the Constitutional Court's ruling years ago. And we wanted to ensure that the court's authority was recognized by the executive. In particular, we wanted to ensure that no renewal extension of the contract would benefit CPS, that an unlawful contract which has, by force of circumstances, had to be renewed would not be beneficial to them. How the court does that is for the court to decide, but we wish to ensure that obedience to the court's order was enforced and that nobody could force you and me and the public at large to pay more because people had dragged their feet in a deliberately dilatory manner.
Oversight to the court was mentioned a number of times yesterday. Why is oversight of the Constitutional Court so critical in this regard?
Ordinarily, oversight by a court should not be necessary. A court gives an order, it's heard the case, it gives an order, and it can accept that what it has ordered will be done. In this particular instance, it's manifest, painfully manifest, that the minister and the state agency responsible did not take the court's attitude back in 2014 seriously and disregarded it. It does not seem as if the deal between the minister and Sasa and CPS is going to be a proper order unless the court has a close look at it and is exercising a supervisory function, either personally or through an agency which it nominates.
We talked about avenues a little bit earlier, and you indicated it's very limited what the court can do. Now, the Concourt did rule, that the previous contract, or the current contract, which ends at the end of this month, is unlawful.
Yes.
Can the court now rule against itself?
No, it cannot, but what it did last time was to say, although this contract was concluded unlawfully and as unconstitutional, in the public interest and in the interests of justice, we cannot summarily terminate this contract. We must allow it to run its course to its conclusion. that is, in a sense, accepting the inevitable, that you've got to live with the unlawful in the meantime. I strongly suspect that whatever the court devises now will have to be something along the same lines. Reluctantly, unwillingly, in the knowledge that this contract should long since have been replaced, we've just got to recognize that CPS is going to be the agency for some time still.
Will this set a precedent, you think, Judge?
I think it will set a precedent in this respect. I sincerely hope it will set a precedent in this respect to show that court orders are not to be toyed with, court orders are to be obeyed.
Judgment has now been reserved. What are your expectations for grants to be paid on the 1st of April and leaving those beneficiaries at ease this morning to say, listen, we will get paid? Because the President did announce that it will be paid, come hell or high water.
Yes, I'm not that much impressed by the President's statements. I'm much more impressed by what happened in court yesterday. I am absolutely convinced that the millions of people out there who depended upon these grants can sleep peacefully and comfortably. Their payments will be continued at the end of the month as in the past. There is no reason to fear that. There is every reason to think that the court will come up with some system of supervised execution of the contract as of 1st of April.
Is there anybody that should be held responsible for this crisis, you think, Judge?
That's one of the things the court is investigating. The court asked some very pertinent questions both before the hearing and during the hearing, and I don't want to transgress on the court's terrain, but purely as an outsider observer, somebody wasn't doing their job here. Who it was and why is for the court to determine.
Judge, I thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
You're very welcome.
That was retired Constitutional Court Judge Johan Krechler with Freedom Under Law, of course, joining the Black Sash in pleading for an extension of the contract, but under very strict conditions. I'd like to get your thoughts, but we are conducting a poll this morning. And here it is. Let's put it up on the screen so you can see it and so we can have a look at the numbers. So far, we're asking the question, should the Department of Social Development take grant payments internally? 149 votes are in. 77% of you are saying yes, they should do it internally. They should take those payments and pay them internally. 23% of you are saying no. Well, I don't know the 23%. Those are all the employees of CPS, perhaps, that want the payments to be done through CPS. Now, here's the question for you. What do you make of yesterday's arguments in the Concourt? The judge said that he was very happy with it. What are your thoughts? Let's take a look on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page, on the Twitter handle. This one from Sipo says, the discussion in the Concourt was to allow CPS to finish its contract and decide what will be the next step forward. Well, as you heard, Sipo, they also said that today is the deadline. If they don't have a contract today, payments will not be made. Now, this one from Lachasa says, let the contract be given to CPS for only 3 months. Only. I doubt if the money will be deposited by the 1st of April. Icon, said Lachasa. Now, the finance minister did indicate that it only takes 3 days for the money to be paid from Treasury into whoever's account that's going to make the payment. So it shouldn't be 12 days. Where does the 12 days come from? That's another question that you can pose. Sipo says, the argument of Concourt about Sasa yesterday was to know what are the qualities brought forward by CPS to do its job. Now, they can do the job because they have got all the infrastructure, but is it legal? That's another question. And who will supervise it? Icona Nazo says, at least our highest court in the land, it's not conflicted like other courts. They made great arguments against the minister, says Icona Nazo. Now, these are some of your comments. Please keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue during the course of the program. Now, our picture of the day comes from Tumi So, who fell inside an unused shaft 2 weeks ago and will not be recovered. There's the little boy there. Authorities have called off the search. Sad picture there. Little boy that fell into that shaft. Comment of the day comes from Thabo Sadibe. Justice Mogoeng is like that uncle they always call when someone is out of order in the family. Every family has one, that uncle. Hashtag Concourt, hashtag Sasa. A very straightforward uncle. Say it like it is, doesn't he? Let's take a look at what's happening in the courts today. Starting off in the Western Cape, a ruling is expected in the Cape Town High Court today regarding the closure of the Eitze High School in Elsies River. The court gave the school a temporary reprieve to remain open until today after the Western Cape Education Department closed it for safety reasons. Moving to the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria, they said to hear an urgent application by the former directors and the chairperson of the Prasa board, Popo Molefe, to set aside the decision of the Transport Minister, Dipuo Peters, to dissolve the board. And as we move to Durban, a ruling in the bail application of a 54-year-old man accused of raping 2 of his own daughters is today expected to take place in the Chatsworth Magistrates Court. Now, we'll keep you posted and updated on all these developments, so stay tuned. Let's now take a short break and we'll be back right after that.
After a horrific accident, major questions were asked.
So step one, I asked myself, do I really want to die? And my answer to that was, I'm not sure. And then step 2 was, do I want my parents to bury me? And the answer to that was no.
Learning kept his brain in full action on how the brain works.
When I was in hospital, right, as I was saying, to catch up with my peers, I started to become obsessed with memory techniques and how the brain works and how we retain information.
Touching lives is his continuous mission.
I now work for a non-profit where we deal with access issues regarding kids with disabilities and persons with disability. We're busy working on beach access.
Being wheelchair-bound did not stop fun in his life.
I party in a wheelchair, I laugh in a wheelchair, I smile in a wheelchair.
For all your uplifting stories, catch Bupilong every Friday.
Now, Corruption Watch is calling for the dismissal of the Minister, Batabile Dlamini, over the Sasa debacle and for a handling of the matter. The organization says it views the proposal by Sasa to extend or renew a contract with Cash Paymaster Services in a serious light. Now, they say the Constitutional Court judgment that the award of the tender was invalid and riddled with administrative irregularities should be treated seriously because this may indicate corruption. David Lewis is the Executive Director of Corruption Watch. He joins us now in studio to discuss this. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Thank you.
Now, you were in court yesterday. What was your observation with the arguments yesterday in court?
Well, you know, the overwhelming observation is the frustration and, you know, dare I say it, anger with the court over the way in which they have been disrespected and misled. And then there are obviously a series of they've been placed in a very complex and difficult position because this is a contract which has already been declared illegal and invalid. And they either have to extend this illegal and invalid contract or they have to compel CPS and Sasa to enter into a new contract. My sense is that what they'll do is they'll extend the illegal and invalid contract, but it's obviously something that the court doesn't want to do and shouldn't have to be doing. And it feels that, you know, I think that the minister has badly let down the court as well as the people of South Africa.
Now, you're correct in saying that the contract was illegal, it was unlawful, constitutionally unlawful. Why are you suggesting, though, that there's corruption between Sasa and CPS in this matter?
Well, it's not only us that are suggesting it. When the court declared the contract to be illegal and invalid, it made the point in contrast to Sasa's point then, that the irregularity to strike down the contract were just sort of administrative irregularities. They were bureaucratic irregularities that made no difference to the outcome and could be easily rectified. And what the court said there is that these irregularities have to be taken seriously, because they may, in the court's words, be token corruption. That if you look underneath the irregularities, you may see that they have been committed not simply because of incompetence, but because they were intended to produce a particular outcome. Now, we don't know if that is the case. What we do know is that this should have been investigated by the criminal justice authorities at the time. Now there has been a repeat of the apparent extraordinary inability of Sasa and the minister to carry out their constitutional mandate. One has to look underneath it. I mean, either they are guilty of a degree of incompetence that is almost unimaginable, or else they have done this in order to produce an outcome that they desire. And Sasa's reasons for doing what they are doing have to be examined. As I say, they're either guilty of incompetence or there is something even more sinister going on here.
Now, you've called for the Hawks to investigate the matter, and I also want you to explain Sasa's adjudication of the 10 billion rand contract with Mr. Michael Hulley, for that matter.
Well, you know, the Hulley issue has come up again in the earlier court judgment. There, when the papers were discovered in the litigation process, there was a rather odd, cryptic reference to Mr. Hulley as a strategic advisor, I think the term was, to the Sasa CEO. And we attempted, and I think the other litigants, Allpay, attempted to find out, to discover his contract, his invoices. They could provide us with neither, nor with an explanation of what he was doing. And then suddenly he reappears again in this instance in meetings with the minister in his office and at the airport. Again, there is nothing explained about it. And he is as I understand it, the legal advisor to the president. I'm not sure if he's the president's personal legal advisor or the advisor to the presidency, but he's very close to the president. And so what is he doing in this thing? Is he representing the president? Is he representing himself? Is he representing another interest? These are the kind of questions that need to be asked and answered.
What are some of the biggest irregularities between this contract between Sasa and CPS? Because there was also the issue of illegal deductions from the beneficiaries' accounts.
That's a somewhat different question, the latter. It's a very serious question, and it's the one that the Black Sash have actually taken up most closely. We've been much more involved in the procurement issue. What is being alleged there, what is true there, is that the holding company of CPS, Net1, runs a whole lot of owns a whole lot of ancillary companies, microloan companies, funeral benefit companies. They sell airtime. They sell a whole lot of products, and they sell them to the recipients of the grants. And you know, there's one argument that says because they have a privileged status and access to the point of payment, they are able to market their products with greater ease than anybody else has. The other allegation, and I can't claim to be fully conversant with this, is that the biometric data, in other words, private details of those who need to provide those details in order to get paid their grant, are being shared with other companies in the Net1 stable, and that somehow, in a manner that I don't fully understand, but I mean, you and I'm sure, have been phoned on occasion by people selling us things that have wondered where they got our telephone number from or our details from. And I think that this is private information, and it seems to be what is alleged. And what I see one group of investigative journalists claim in a claim this morning to have verified is that they are providing, CPS is providing its fellow Net1 companies with this information.
With the database, which is supposed to belong to the state.
Well, I think there's a dispute about whether it belongs to CPS or the state or actually the private individuals, I think is who it really belongs to. But you know, what is clear is whoever it belongs to, it shouldn't be permitted to share that with others.
Is there a sense perhaps that this is a legal organization, but some would call it a legal mashunisha for that matter, because they're money lenders to a certain degree, but within the grouping of Net One?
Yeah, well, you know, money lenders is a very pejorative term. I mean, they're micro loan companies, you know, and who could dispute the fact that people in the predicament that the grant recipients find themselves in need the services of micro loans. You know, there are questions about the rate of interest, not only in relation to the CPS company, but in the Net One company, but in relation to micro lenders generally. It's supposed to be a very tightly regulated industry. I think people find it very abusive and exploitative often. But in this instance, the controversy arises because of the apparent links or the alleged links between receiving the grant or being paid out the grant by one company and that linking them to another set of services all down the line.
Now, I know that the department went through the process. There was a tender process, and some companies fell out, and some others, the other companies did not have the infrastructure to produce the service that Sasa requires. But why was CPS the only company put forward? The post office has come out lately and says that they can produce this very same service within 6 months.
Well, you know, that's the question that the judges were asking yesterday, that you know, you might ask why they committed irregularities in the first place in a 10 billion rand tender, the biggest public procurement award tender awarded since the arms deal, actually. And now they've had 2 years to rectify it, and they still haven't rectified it. And as I say, this points to unbelievable incompetence or to Sasa's attempt to achieve a predetermined outcome. And that's precisely what has got to be answered. And you know, the judges have pointed out that nobody has taken seriously the original court order. They have misled the court into the court relinquishing its supervisory jurisdiction. They misled Parliament. Manifestly, the minister has misled Parliament. And, you know, in the end has misled the public, and I don't doubt has caused extraordinary anxiety amongst the 17 million people for whom this grant is not even only a matter of dignity or whatever. This is a matter of whether you go hungry on the evening of the 1st of April or you don't. You know?
Now, the country focused on some enormous heist that was happening at the airport, but some called this, the Sasa debacle, the biggest heist in the country. Is that why you are calling for the minister to step down? Yeah,
I mean, I think this is the lowest point in the 20 years of our democracy. I mean, not only does it show unbelievable incompetence, or, as I say, something more sinister than that, but it shows an unbelievable lack of care. You know, again, you're talking about something different to an arms deal. You're talking about something different to an Nkandla. You're talking about, firstly, the one government program that everybody says the South African government is a world leader in, has done really well. And they've done really well by the people of South Africa and the poorest people of South Africa. And to play loose and fast with this program is to really question whether you have the interests of the country at heart at all. And that, as I say, apart from the fact that she's misled the Constitutional Court, she's ignored the Constitutional Court, she's misled Parliament. What has she been doing with the minister's salary over all this time? And, you know, really you've got to, you know, say that she doesn't belong in public life.
In conclusion, Mr. Lewis, your expectations from this judgment?
I think that the court, as I say, the court are going to have to extend the contract in some form or another. I think they'll extend it rather than impose the duty to negotiate a new contract. I'm also expecting them, and I don't know exactly what it is they will do or can do, but I'm expecting them to have very harsh words for the minister in this regard, and I really would think the political leadership needs to take account of that.
Ms. Lewis, I thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio. That was David Lewis. He's the Executive Director of Corruption Watch. We'd like to find out from you what you have to say about this. We're conducting a poll. Let's take a look at that poll and see where it stands right now. 157 votes in. You have 22 hours left to vote. 75% of you are saying yes, the Department of Social Development should take the grant payments internally. They should do it themselves. And 25% of you are saying no. And I guess, and it's just a guess, that it might be some of the employees from CPS saying that they have to do it themselves. Alex says, just give CPS a few months' contract and look for an alternative while the citizens are getting their money. Yes, Alex, that I think what the court is striving for. And Kolisi says that the question is, of course, how long that might be. And Kolisi says, what's the use of having state agencies if their core business will be outsourced? That's grounds for corruption and looting. Yeah, that's what the court is asking. Sipho says, sir, grants must be paid. As the Scopa chair said, the money is there. So if it's there, then why taking so long to clear the air? Well, Sipho, it's about the mechanism to pay the money. That's what we heard yesterday. Dean Kala says, I just wish they paid this grant. Hashtag Sasa. He's got a picture there of Tupac. You remember him? Barry Martin says, this is a real joke. First, the Concourt gave the Department of Social Development enough time to sort out the problem. Now, they must do it themselves. Well, not yet. They haven't got the infrastructure as yet, Barry. So, we'll be waiting for the court's decision on that. First, let's now go to all the newspapers from around the globe and look at the front pages there. Starting off in Europe, the Times report that Theresa May made the Chancellor pay the price for a botched tax rise yesterday with a U-turn that showed the government's vulnerability to pressure from rebel Tory MPs. It says May forces Hammond into U-turn over the budget. Moving to New York, the Wall Street Journal says that federal authorities have charged 4 men, including 2 officers from Russia's spy agency, with hacking computer systems at Yahoo and stealing personal data that affected hundreds of millions of Yahoo users. In the first such case, to directly target the Russian government. And then finally in Israel, the Jerusalem Post reports that Jordan has an important role to play in making peace between Israel and the Palestinians. U.S. Special Representative for International Negotiations, Jason D. Greenblatt, said that on Wednesday after meeting in Amman with King Abdullah II. Now, those are your newspapers from around the globe. Let's take a look at what's happening on our Facebook page. And when we look there, we see that the popular South African concept of Ubuntu has come under scrutiny in Gabon as part of the ongoing arts and culture exchange program between the two nations. Some Gabonese have questioned if South Africans still have a sense of Ubuntu. Well, then we also see the African National Congress, the ANC, admitting that government has created an environment of confusion for the country's most vulnerable, following a constitutional court application by the Black Sash Trust on the matter of the social grant payment. Now, we're having that discussion this morning. We continue with that focus this morning here. And finally, the lack of women's voices in parliament and cabinets around the world compromises the quality of democracy. So says the Executive Director of the United Nations Women, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, at the launch of the Interparliamentary Union's IPU Women in Politics 2017 map. Now, you can find all these stories and more on our Facebook page as well as on the SABC News website. We'll come back. Remember that we'll speak to the Black Sash just after 10 o'clock to get their take on the story. Yeah, they have taken Sasa and the Minister to the Constitutional Court. So stay tuned. We'll take a break.
Technology is all around us and some can't live without it.
There's also the problem of internet connectivity.
I was speaking to a robot.
It also makes a few governments panic and therefore they block the internet from time to time.
They just ban the internet, which is the source of my livelihood.
For African technology and social media news, join me, Phumelele Zondi, on Network every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
Now, let's continue with our story. Lawyers have proposed that the invalid contract of the Social Development Department with Cash Paymaster Services be extended so that the grant beneficiaries can be paid on the 1st of next month. The non-profit organization Black Sash approached the Constitutional Court to exercise oversight over the process to find a new payment provider. Yesterday, a full bench of justices heard arguments proposing the extension. Social Development Minister Bathabile Dlamini and the South African Social Security Agency, Sasa, came under fire in the courtroom. Meanwhile, Cash Paymaster Services says today is the latest that any social grant deal will be concluded.
This is a crisis. We must do whatever is necessary to intervene to avoid the proliferation of the crisis.
The state of affairs has never been any clearer. Even the state attorney argued that the sense of crisis is real. Sasa knew since April last year that a storm was coming, while the justices found it baffling that the minister didn't seek to rectify this or inform the court.
Given the somewhat disobedience that we have seen in the past in relation to these matters, the orders and directions not being complied with, will it be appropriate to consider factoring in the rule Nizai, calling upon the minister and everybody concerned to show cause why they should not be held in contempt?
But it was the showdown between the justices and the counsel for the minister at Sasa which left many questions.
What explanation do we have from the minister appreciating the enormity of her responsibilities, her constitutional responsibilities, to say, this is what happened, this is the briefing that I have insisted on, this was my understanding of the progress made, and this is how I sought to make sure that there isn't a repeat of what happened before?
I can make no submissions on that because the papers do not reveal anything in that connection. When I urged with respect, caution on the court in this regard, is that an inference to be drawn from the absence of information about that, and I accept that it is an inference which could be drawn, is that the minister was utterly supine, which is the implication of the line of questions being put to me. But it is not the only inference. The minister was asked when she became aware that Sasa would not be able to pay by the end of March, and she answered that question. The answer was given in Dr. Magasela's affidavit, and she confirmed the correctness of that affidavit.
The post office disputed that only CPS can offer the service. The company insists that it is complex and has asked the court order that the draft contract, which has increased fees, be signed. A judgment has been reserved.
And that's the reason we're asking you that question this morning. We want to find out from you. What do you make of all of this? Yesterday was all the arguments by all the parties scandal. There was a number of the Black Sash was there. We heard from the Freedom Under Law. They were there. There's a number of organizations really backing the Black Sash in this particular court verdict. So we want to know from you about that issue. What do you make 100%. Of the arguments yesterday? There's a couple of tweets coming in.
Yeah. No, but before we bring up those tweets, well, there they are. But there's some personal story I'd like to share because I'm actually very close with me with Sasa and social development. Venga Benura says, I agree with Lewis that Minister Dlamini is incompetent and should resign.
Well, there you have it. This one from Ruth says, the Concourt, they mustn't extend that contract of CPS at all. Sasa or the post office must take over. A couple of questions about the infrastructure there. And this one from Sipo, Kendall.
Yeah, Sipo comes in with a newsroom. In my view, it seems there's something fishy about this money. Someone is hiding something, and believe you, sir, someone must talk.
Yeah, there you have it. Nkolisi says, otherwise, we highly appreciate the strides undertaken by Section 21 institutions ensuring and enforcing accountability for Sasa. Now, that's exactly what they did to make sure that they do their job. Why must you be forced to do your job? That's the question. Eh?
Yeah, no, it's actually quite interesting how the Constitution has been tested over the last few years. Sipo says that the discussion in the Concourt was to allow CPS to finish its contract and decide what will be the next step forward.
Now, you know, the critical story here is Gogo Dlamini at home waiting for a pension, not knowing what will happen on the 1st of April.
You know, Elvis, when the Department of Social Development decided to divest itself of the act of paying out grants, I was actually integrally involved with the Social Development Department of Social Development with actually creating Sasa. So Panyaza Lesufu was still there before it moved to education. So it was a very intimate process and a very involved process, and which took a very long time. And the one thing about it that stood out is everybody believed that Sasa was going to be the shining light of how government can actually work with a policy-making division as well as an action arm, which is what Sasa was. So this is very close to the heart for me. Everything had been going well up until a certain point, of course, and that's why we sit where we sit.
So the outsourcing to CPS was something that they had to do.
It was never part of the. It was never part of the process at that time. Sasa was going to be managing all of that within itself.
So something happened. Something fishy happened. That's what we want to know from you. What is so fishy? Let's take a look at the poll and see what you have to say about that. On the poll, there's 164 votes in, Kendall.
Yes, and of those votes, 76% say yes, the Department of Social Development should take grant payments internally, whereas 24% believe that they cannot.
I believe that 24% has got something to do with either Net 1 or CPS, that 24% of the pundits there. Sipo says, sir, the CPS needs to continue with its work without interference of the minister. In a few days to come, grants must be paid. You're right, Sipo, in a couple of, not even a week and a half, 2 weeks. Where are we now? Yeah, 2 weeks?
Yeah, we are now. Moody, I think it's Moody Malong says, why does it have to be a norm that every government tender, thank you, should be riddled with corruption?
Exactly the point. Paul says she must step down and apologize, says Paul. That's what what some of the organizations want.
Bantu says, looks like Batabile and her department do not have people's interests at heart. This is very bad.
Well, there you have it. Those are some of your comments. Please keep them coming after 10 o'clock. You don't want to miss us. Black Sash will be in studio. They were supposed to be here earlier, but unfortunately, they're running a little bit late. So after 10 o'clock, we'll discuss the issues with them as to why they did this. Now, it's time to take a look at the weather. There's a weather that's changing, Tsetsi Monare, and we want to know the political economy of the weather from you.
Hi there, welcome from the weather desk. Yes, it looks like the weather is really changing. Some winds coming in from the right directions. The high pressure cells are already moving further up north, especially towards the Atlantic Ocean there. Leaving room for some cold fronts to come through. Those low pressures will be coming in very soon towards the southwestern parts, bringing cooler conditions and also rainy weather towards the Western Cape. But for now, we're still enjoying the warm days and warm evenings with a little bit of rainfall towards the northeastern parts of South Africa and also up north along the northern parts of Southern Africa. Madagascar will also see some rain today and tomorrow. And then by Friday, tomorrow, you should see some clouds towards the southwestern parts of South Africa, towards the Western Cape province. And then again, a little drizzle expected for the northern interior. But still, most chance of rainfall are expected towards Tanzania as well as over Kenya, including some parts of Mozambique. Your temperatures, like I said, it's still quite a hot one along the central part of South Africa. Appington at 35, 30 for Pretoria. Polokwane reaches a maximum of 28 this afternoon. Bobela 27, that goes for Durban, and Cape Town drops to 24 degrees for all those that are going to be along Mozambique and Madagascar. Also expect slightly warmer conditions for the day. Majanga at maximum of 30 degrees. Now back to mainland Africa. Harare is at 26. Bulawayo is reaching a maximum of 29 degrees. And then take a look at Beitbridge. really hot temperatures there at a maximum of 38 degrees. For all those that are traveling further up north, or if you live along the northern and the central parts of Africa, do expect some partly cloudy conditions just over here closer towards the equator. Always raining. We're expecting more rainfall today with possibilities of those temperatures increasing to the 34s. You can see towards Brazzaville and Kinshasa. Libreville is at 30, 38 for Banjul, and Juba at 37. Those are quite hot, and those are basically normal temperatures for them along those parts. But then the rainfall ceases just from Central African Republic all the way towards the northern parts into Libya. And then we see again light drizzle for Tunis as well as over some parts of Morocco along the coastal cities. And also West Africa should see similar conditions of rainfall, especially moving towards Cote d'Ivoire as well as some parts of Liberia. Nigeria also seeing some showers later into the afternoon. Temperatures cooling down significantly for Baghdad at around 9 degrees. 32 for Mecca, 13 towards Tripoli, and a hot day is expected towards Agadez at a maximum of 39. The rest of West Africa, temperatures seem to be soaring up to about 42 for all those that are going to be in Niamey, in N'Djamena, 38 degrees. It's going to be quite sunny along the interior with a bit of clouds and rainfall along the coastal cities, Accra, Lome, Abidjan, and closer towards Togo as well. Do expect possibilities of some rainfall. Marrakech drops to 22, Rabat 17, and cooler weather towards Las Palmas and the rest of Gambia. If you're going to be in Bakau, do expect those temperatures to decrease quite a little bit. That's it for the weather, but do stay tuned. There's more to come on the show. Water-wise, water is an essential need. The scarcity of it could lead to loss of many lives, including livestock, plants, and much more. It requires us to use it sparingly and responsibly in times of need, failing which our taps and sanitation will not function. For more on water and weather issues, stay tuned to News Today, every Friday at 5:15 Central African Time. SABC News, making you water-wise.
In 2013, there were similar disturbances at this very facility, and it would seem to me that this time around, the same issues that led to those disturbances are still prevalent.
This time around, funny enough, the 26, 27, 28 gangs ganged together and attacked officials, which is for us something that is very abnormal, and it has never happened.
Almost 23 years into our democracy, we are still confronted with a system that is as violent as in the dark days of apartheid.
The Department of Correctional Services has transformed from a prison system to a correctional system.
I've been arguing since time immemorial, and it doesn't help. When you argue with facts and you speak truth to power, justice, and authority, then you are seen as being arrogant and confrontational. I came here because I've been around the block many, many times, and Mr. Modise is a seasoned correctional officer. He knows exactly what is going in there. He knows exactly what needs to be done. And he knows for the fact that the Department of Correctional Services can't do it all by themselves.
It's the second hour. It's 10:00 hours Central Africa time on this Thursday here on the Newsroom. Jumbo Africa. I'm Elvis Preslin.
And I'm Kendall Mahamat.
We'll be with you until 12 o'clock. Now, today we continue our focus today, Kendall, on the Sasa grant issue. Yesterday, the Concourt was sitting where Black Sash approached the Constitutional Court to exercise overview and oversight over the Sasa contract, or the CPS contract for that matter.
Yeah, no, it was a day of very interesting arguments in court, and I can tell you one thing, that it makes me proud that we've got such a strong constitution, and that's why we're also asking you that particular question that we've been asking you all day. It's on your screens right now, and we're asking you, what do you make of yesterday's arguments about the Concourt's decision yesterday? What are you making about those arguments in Concourt yesterday?
A couple of tweets coming in. Let's take a look at what you have to say in relation to that. This one from Josimaz says the Concourt should not extend the CPS contract. This will at least give us opportunity to fix up this Batebile and Sasa mess. It is a mess, isn't it?
Yeah, and absolutely. Malibongwe comes in with Newsroom. It seems like the only choice we have now is to extend that CPS contract for 6 months so that people can get their money.
Well, a lot of people talking about the 6 months because the post office says that they can be ready in 6 months. So let's see what happens when the Concourt comes with that decision. This one from Icona Nazo says, at least our highest court in the land is not conflicted like other courts. They made great arguments against the minister.
See, Paul says the discussion in the Concourt was to allow CPS to finish its contract and decide what will the next step forward be.
This one from Vangai says, I agree with Lewis that the Minister Dlamini is incompetent and should resign. These are some of your comments coming through, but we're also conducting a poll because we would like to find out from you if the payments of the social grants to be done internally by the Department of Social Development. So let's take a look at that poll, Kenny.
Yeah, I think it would be taking a step backwards, but hey, 168 votes are in, 76% say yes, absolutely. Social development should pay the grants itself, whereas 24% say no. And now I'm more likely to side with the no's because I understand exactly why it is they created Sasa in the first place.
This one from Kolisi says, Sasa does have the capacity, as they have a network of officers across the country. Why not employ that strength
Exactly, that was the whole point. Make sure that people get paid across the country by Sasa. Sipho says, sir, let the right candidate do the job and do away with corruption and remove the unwanted one and to bring joy to the worried people.
Barry Martin comes in, he says, this is a real joke. First, the Concourt gave the Department of Social Development enough time to sort out this mess. Now, they must do it themselves.
Too true. Too true, Barry. Thank you. I think I should got it right. Sasa should stick to what it was established and created for. Why is our ANC government seems to be consistency dropping the ball? Yeah, no, Mzolisi not happy with everything that's been going on there.
Muli says, why does it have to be the norm that every government tender should be riddled with corruption? Hashtag Sasas, ask Millie. These are some of your comments coming through. We'll read them as we continue. We have the Black Session in a little short while to talk about this issue and the Concourt case. But right now, let's take a look at your news headlines. President Jacob Zuma will today answer oral questions in his first appearance in the National Assembly since his State of the Nation address. Cash Paymaster Services says today is the latest that any grant deal will be concluded if they are to deliver on the 1st of April. And the urgent application by the former directors and chairperson of the Prasa board, Popo Molefe, is set aside the decision of the Transport Minister, Dipuo Peters, to dissolve the board gets underway. We'll keep you updated on that story as we continue. Now this is what you can expect. But right now, let's first go to Kendall to find out what's happening on the sports front.
Well, thank you very much, Elvis. Before I bring you the news, this is what you can expect in the sports a little later on today.
It's taken, there we go.
The Proteas throw away the early advantage in Wellington as both Stephen Cook and Dean Elgar go out on the cheap. And title holder SuperSport United survive an almighty scare against NFD side Royal Eagles to advance in this season edition of the Midday Cup.
Finish from Brockido. Freedom and allowed to get in the header from Bethlehem Tembu.
And in towards Bakayoko. It spins again.
Now, Monaco close the upset of the night as they overturn a 2-goal deficit to knock Manchester City out of the UEFA Champions League. All this and more I have for you later on at 10:40 or so when it is time for the sports. For now, let's bring you the top story in our news bulletin. President Jacob Zuma will this afternoon answer oral questions in the National Assembly. It will be the president's first appearance in the House since his State of the Nation address in February. Only the ANC, the DA, the IFP and the NFP have been allocated the 6 written questions. Other parties will get an opportunity when it's time for follow-up questions. Following calls for Social Development Minister Advertisements to be fired during a snap debate on the social grant payment saga, President Zuma has been asked what he is going to do about her. Now, lawyers have proposed that the invalid contract of the Social Development Department with Cash Paymaster Services be extended so grant beneficiaries can be paid on the 1st of next month. The non-profit organization Black Sash approached the Constitutional Court to exercise oversight of the process to find a new payment provider. Yesterday, a full bench of justices heard arguments proposing the extension. Social Development Minister Bathabile Dlamini and the South African Social Security Agency came under fire in the courtroom. Meanwhile, Cash Paymaster Services says today is the latest that any social grant deal can be concluded.
This is a crisis. We must do whatever is necessary to intervene to avoid the proliferation of the crisis.
The state of affairs has never been any clearer. Even the state attorney argued that the sense of crisis is real. Sasa knew since April last year that a storm was coming, while the justices found it baffling that the minister didn't seek to rectify this or inform the court.
Given the somewhat disobedience that we have seen in the past in relation to these matters, the orders and directions not being complied with, would it be appropriate to consider factoring in the rule NISA, calling upon the minister and everybody concerned to show cause why they should not be held in contempt?
But it was the showdown between the justices and the counsel for the minister at Sasa which left many questions.
What explanation do we have from the minister appreciating the enormity of her responsibilities, her constitutional responsibilities, to say, this is what happened, this is the briefing that I have insisted on, this was my understanding of the progress made, and this is how I sought to make sure that there isn't a repeat of what happened before?
I can make no submissions on that because the papers do not reveal anything in that connection. When I urged with respect, caution on the court in this regard, is that an inference to be drawn from the absence of information about that, and I accept that it is an inference which could be drawn, is that the minister was utterly supine, which is the implication of the line of questions being put to me. But it is not the only inference. The minister was asked when she became aware that Sasa would not be able to pay by the end of March, and she answered that question. The answer was given in Dr. Magasela's affidavit, and she confirmed the correctness of that affidavit.
The post office disputed that only CPS can offer the service. The company insists that it is complex and has asked the court order that the draft contract, which has increased fees, be signed. A judgment has been reserved.
Now, of course, we've been asking you a very pertinent question to this particular discussion and been wanting to know from you, what do you make of the arguments put in the Concourt yesterday with regards to this saga? Now, we've got some comments from you that we'd like to share with the rest of our viewers. We've got Sipho, who's come in and said, "Sirs, we as South Africans need answers. Action must be taken. We do not need delays. We do not need Oxford Dictionary definitions. We need action." Bantu comes in with Newsroom. This is what Bataville and CPS wanted. Did you see CPS CEO saying grants can be paid by planes? And a big laugh there. So yes, a lot of people are believing that a lot more can be said and done on this. And that's exactly why Elvis is standing by with a very important guest.
Thank you, Kendall. Now, Advocate Jeff Budlender, legal representative for the Black Sash, argued in the Constitutional Court that Social Security Agency SASA has failed to carry out its obligations and mandate. The Constitutional Court was hearing non-profit organization Black Sash's application to seek the reinstatement of the court's oversight role in the payments of social grants. The court wants answers on the new grants distribution deal between Sasa and Cash Paymaster Services. At the center of this controversy are grant payments to about 17 million recipients on April the 1st, which some call April Fool's Day. Black Sash Gauteng Regional Manager Thandiwe Zulu is in studio to talk to us about the merits of their application to the highest court in South Africa. Very good morning to you, Thandiwe, and welcome.
Good morning.
First and foremost, I would like to get your sense from the proceedings yesterday, and how did you see it, and what are the minimum requirements that Black Sash would like to see coming out of this court case?
Yeah, I think the court process yesterday was it was fairly fair, given the fact that all parties were heard. Maybe the second question that you're asking is with regards to what we've put forward. What we've put forward was the fact that the Concourt, the Constitutional Court, needs to reinstate its role as in terms of oversight with regards to the processes that is going to be undertaken with regards to the agreement between Sasa and CPS. And maybe basic from our side is, given our day-to-day exposure and experience in the process and with regards to the people that are beneficiaries, we would definitely want to see the beneficiaries being paid on the first. That one is a basic one, and it's non-negotiable. And the other thing that I probably need to raise is the fact that when the continuation of the contract happens, be it a new contract, be it the continuation based on the current contract, what we would like to see is a situation where the beneficiary's information is protected. It cannot be utilized for any other purpose except for the payment of grants, because over the past 5 years, what we've seen under the current contract is the utilization of the private information of individuals who are grant beneficiaries in the system being found to be like in spaces where it should not have been. And there is a trust relationship between the beneficiary and the state. When I give my information, definitely it's for the purpose that we've agreed on. So we would like to see that happening, that whoever takes the contract, whether it's extension, that the beneficiary's information is protected.
Now, that is very critical to your application because you have called for Cash Paymaster Services to hand over the entire database of social grant beneficiaries to Sasa. Why is that so important? And could it be said, because the problem is, and some people are saying that it seems like the department don't even have an extra database or a copy of the database.
Actually, for CPS to be in the space was as a result of Sasa
providing the database,
engaging them. Sasa, for the fact that Sasa was established, it was mainly for Sasa to pay the beneficiary. Ultimately, what we would like to see is insourcing, where we don't have a third party in the space, where we have a citizen with the government in the space where there's direct payment of the grant, because there it
without
guarantees,
a third party.
Without any third party. But in the interim, and for the purpose that, for the fact that Sasa did not have the systems in place, it was acceptable that they would find a third party that would provide that kind of a service. But its establishment was basically for payments of grant. So that's why we're saying let the whole process, let the whole payments of grant and administration of grants come back in-house and be insourced, and Sasa takes its responsibility and pay the grants directly.
What is that interim period that you're talking about?
We look from the, if one was to argue very wildly so, one would be saying Sasa's mandate is to pay the grants. So in actual fact, it's a matter that should have happened from the onset.
Because
However,
they had 2 years to do that, by the way.
I'm not sure of the 2 years because the court has not actually pronounced. It was just a proposal from all parties. So in that regard, if it's continuation, Sasa needs to get into a process of getting the space adequate in terms of capacity building and in terms of getting the systems back in-house so that they're able to, yes, it will take some time, but however, whoever they engage, critical, very critical, is the protection of the system, is the protection of the beneficiary, is the fact that my information is, in terms of the right to privacy, needs to be treated with dignity.
Why?
So the interim time that you're asking will be dependent on the capacity of the capacity building process, which for us, it's a matter of agency that Sasa needs to be actually looking into it, not after what we've gone through as a country.
Is 6 months too short a period? Many of our viewers are suggesting that they need to get 6 months in order to make sure that they pay the grants, and then it must revert back to Sasa, that Sasa can pay it internally.
Realistically, we would probably have to be, in a way, realistic. From what one observed yesterday, there seems to be a lean between, I mean, towards the 1 year period or something just beyond 1 year. That for us would probably be like quite reasonable, because you also don't want ourselves to be in the very same state where after 6 months we are unable to provide and we are in a state of uncertainty.
Why is Black Sash arguing that the court must oversee the entire grant payment system, whereas the Department of Social Development says that the Auditor General as well as the Public Protector must take care of that process?
This is a constitutional matter, and a right to social security is a constitutional right. The experience is with the current contract, Concourt had to rule the validity of the contract to be invalid from 2012, 2013. That itself is indicative that the court made a determination in terms of what should then happen, what should Sasa do, and then Sasa gave feedback to the court. However, if everything was in order, we wouldn't be in the situation that we are in. Now we're saying Concourt, reinstate and be very close to the situation so that we don't really find 17 million people in an uncertain state, in a state of anxiety, and beginning to arguing whether this is crisis or not. And I'm glad that the Chief Justice yesterday said it himself, that this is crisis. We can't be in a denial state.
Self-made crisis for that matter. Now, please explain to us the issue of the illegal deductions, because 17 million grant beneficiaries, and it seems like that Cash Paymaster Services was making more money from illegal deductions than from the actual contract.
The current contract, unfortunately, they had a gap in it because it did not close the gap in terms of CPS. If you are paying the grants, or it could have been anybody, if you're paying the grants, that's what should happen. Now, CPS is a subsidiary to Net1. Net1 has other companies. Now they found themselves in the space where they were able to now sell products to beneficiaries. And maybe we need to also go back to the basic. Why social assistance? Social assistance is for the basic needs. And however, we still want to maintain the fact that when you get a grant, it doesn't mean that you are less off, you can't have access, but it should be your decision in terms of what you want to buy and what would that be serving for your own purpose. Now, what we've seen, we've got cases where we've had instances of individual, Mr. Bunny, that was all over in terms of media, whose grant, and he's not the only one, whose grant has had an effect of a deduction of a loan, of airtime, of electricity, where they did not even engage with the process in terms of that purchase. And we've brought those cases to the fore, and we're saying there should also be a recourse system in this instant. And we've actually even said Sasa must take that responsibility of seeing to it that we have a recourse system. Unfortunately, even that recourse system, those people that are going through that process of having had the deduction happening are battling with getting through in terms of disputing the deduction and also getting a refund. So it's really about time that the whole process be insourced and Sasa takes the responsibility. Because if there was no third party whose interests also are elsewhere, I'm sure, and I'm definitely sure, that we would not have experienced the situation. So some of the deductions that we've seen, people have some voluntarily gotten into but in some instances we had a case of Meg Gloria from Wolmaranstad, whose grant was actually deducted and for the airtime, yet she did not even own a phone.
Gogo Dlamini is sitting at home this morning, waiting for the 1st of April to get her payment from her pension. Do you think that will happen?
From departing from our premise, I said initially, as Black Sash, we would like to see beneficiaries being paid on the 1st of April. That one, we can't play around.
Constitutional right.
It's a constitutional right, and we can't play around with the lives of people that are dependent. We've got children, household-headed families, where this morning, one of the interviews that I saw, the boy was saying, look, I'm taking care of my siblings, and if the money doesn't come through, I don't know how, and he's still at high school. So really, it cannot happen that we're just praying that, however, we're depending on our government to see to it that it does happen.
You were talking about recourse earlier. What sort of recourse, and how is the contract structured between CPS and Sasa in terms of that recourse that the beneficiary can get?
Recourse system, in actual fact, people are expected to approach CPS directly, those that have experienced that. But again, going to CPS, our space, again, an argument is you can't be a referee and a player. You have deducted money, somebody comes and you are to put in a recourse system. That itself is problematic. Initially, Sasa was not in that space, and we had to sit around the table and say, Sasa, this is your responsibility. CPS came into the space because of the engagement that you've entered into. So you need to come into the space and assist those people that would like to dispute. And in disputing, we're also saying they should be refunded. And however, there were very few cases that we could show that were refunded. Most of them have not been. How the system works is, yes, then Sasa took the responsibility, then the beneficiaries go to Sasa. We encourage that you go to Sasa, you go and explain, then they've made to fill all the documentation. However, that process still goes to CPS, and Sasa also relies on CPS in terms of the turnaround time and the refund. That itself is a big problem. And if they go direct to CPS, the telephone they are continuously ringing, and it actually takes again from the airtime point of view, and the very same money that they don't have, they have to spend on a telephone to dispute a transaction that they never even gave consent to. It is not fair.
Tandire Zulu sitting here with me. She is from Black Sash, the Gauteng Regional Manager, so we're going to continue this discussion. But let's first now go to the members of Parliament Standing Committee on Public Accounts, Scopa, have called for a full parliamentary inquiry into the uncertainty surrounding Sasa's payments of social grants. Now, both the Minister of Social Development and Finance have briefed Scopa on their role in the social grants saga. Scopa plays a specific and very significant role in the parliamentary oversight process. Traditionally, Scopa, because of its exceptional role, is always chaired by a member of the opposition. The chairperson of Scopa, Themba Gori, now joins us from our parliamentary studios in Cape Town. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Thank you.
I first and foremost would like to get your reaction to the Constitutional Court proceedings yesterday. Thoughts?
Well, I think the proceedings merely confirmed the things that we were raising about the fact that the Minister of Social Development and the officials slept on the job. And secondly, what we've been saying about CPS, that it is an arrogant company that has a colonial attitude of merely coming to make money out of Africa and shipping it out. We are awaiting the outcome, but as things stand, I think that Parliament is vindicated for having taken the firm stand that it took, that heads should roll, people should be held accountable for this cynical plot of creating a crisis for the country because of the interests of a few people.
So it's your contention that we have a crisis on our hands, Mr. Gordy? The Minister does see it that way, which is totally different from the Chief Justice, because she says there is no crisis. What about Scopa?
Well, you know, those who have done a little bit of history will know there was a ruler in Rome who was fiddling around whilst Rome was burning. Her utterances reminded me of that. Look, if 2 weeks before the end of a 5-year contract, we do not know as yet who the service provider is, who is going to distribute social grants to about 17 million recipients. If we do not have a contract in our hands 2 weeks before the expiry of the current contract, I don't know how anybody would say this is not a crisis, except, of course, if they are not dependent on social grants, have no understanding and appreciation of the anxiety that people who depend on social grants to alleviate the grinding poverty in which they live. A person who has no such understanding can say there's no crisis, but I think it is an insult to South Africans who, all of them, clearly understand that there's a problem, there's a crisis, for somebody in a position of responsibility and leadership who actually has a constitutional responsibility to ensure that people are guaranteed of the payment of the social grants, stand up and say there is no crisis.
Mm-hmm. Do you get a sense as Scopa that there's perhaps illegality between the contract between Sasa and CPS for that matter, and that somebody or some people are perhaps profiteering from this contract?
Well, look, we have always maintained as Scopa that grants must be paid on the 1st of April, and I'm sure they will be paid. But the fundamental question to us as Parliament is, will they be paid legally or illegally? Meaning, will there be a legal contract or not? Remember that the current contract that is expiring was declared illegal by the Constitutional Court, primarily because Sasa officials fiddled with the bidding process to favor CPS. So our expectation was that at any available opportunity, Sasa and the department would want to distance themselves from CPS because of that history. But no, we see that officials led by the minister are clinging tenaciously to CPS, which raises the question, but why? If you have a company that exploits our people, if you have a company that does not respect the government, if you have a company that is foreign owned, and yet our minister and those around here do not want to see this company go, then you ask yourself, but in whose interests and what interests are being served by perpetuating this contract with CPS?
Now, as an oversight body in Parliament, should South Africa entertain the new CPS contract that, as you indicated now, that it was declared irregular by the Constitutional Court? And is there a feeling that Sasa has failed in their attempt to find a solution besides the CPS deal?
Well, I don't think that's a feeling. Those are facts. And I think the SABC has done a great job, you know, in reporting extensively on this matter. Say that I believe that every South African now have the facts of what has happened. Look, when you enter into a contract, that contract has an expiry date. And for God's sake, I'm sure somebody in Sasa in their offices have a calendar and should be able to know that on such and such a day, this contract is coming to an end. And therefore, we should start making preparations to replace it. So for us to be where we are, it is a very deliberate thing. That's why even yesterday in court, there was this ruse that the minister only knew in October last year, and yet the project manager knew by April that Sasa will not be able to make it. You can see lies when they are being told. We know that the Minister of Social Development is running Sasa as if she is the CEO, which is against the law for the minister to be involved in administrative matters, in tender matters the way she is. So there is no way that they didn't know what was going on, what was happening. And I have seen an interim report of the Ministerial Advisory Team, which was actually hinting to the fact that they should consider the post office. And that was in 2014, September. So it can't be that something just occurred all of a sudden. People knew and decided not to act.
In closing, Mr. Gordy, can we expect a parliamentary inquiry?
Look, as a committee, we are working around the possibility of engaging the post office to check whether they were involved in the past, they were contacted, this and that. And it's only after that we're going to decide as a committee what it is that we want to do, because every time we talk about this matter, you realize that there's a very, very murky relationship between Sasa and CPS, and it's very disconcerting for Parliament. We would like to understand who are the players, who are the evil forces behind this Sasa-CPS relationship.
I thank you so much for your time, sir. That
Thank you.
was the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, Scopa Gordy, chatting to us. Now we still have in studio Thandi Zulu, the Black Sash Gauteng Regional Manager. In closing, Thandiwe, the 1st of April is dawning on us. Some call it April Fool's Day. As Black Sash, what do you think will happen on the 1st? Will people get their money? I've asked that question before, but I would like to get a confirmation.
From Black Sash, we would like to see people getting their grants. People depend on that grant. People's lives are hanging on the grant. And 17 million people, we're not talking, even if there were 2 million, they have the right. It's within our constitution, and they have to be considered. We cannot afford to have 17 million people being disadvantaged when in actual fact the system and the constitution of our country says they are rightfully supposed to be benefiting.
I just want to check with you, there's one thing that baffled me a bit. They talk about 17 million beneficiaries, but there's also a number of 10 or 12 million beneficiaries? How does that work?
As it stands now, it's at 17 million.
Yes.
As it stands, those would be your children, those would be your older people, those would be your disabled people, and yeah, those are the three.
So it's the whole basket of
it's the whole
services.
basket, yes.
I thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
Thank you for the invite.
Well, there you have it. That's from the Black Sash, Tandiwe Zulu. She's the Black Sash Gauteng Regional Manager in studio with us. And we would like to get your thoughts on this matter. Let us know, what do you make of the arguments yesterday in the Concourt, as well as participate on our poll in relation to the question that we pose there. Do you think that, well, there's the question of the day for you. What do you make of yesterday's arguments in court, in the Constitutional Court? And the poll is also up there. Let's take a look at the poll and see what you have to say so far. On the poll, there's 168 votes. We're asking, should the Department of Social Development take grant payments internally? 76% of you are saying, yes, they should do it internally. And 24% of you are saying no. Brigo Bricks says, if they give the post offices the opportunity, what about the small towns like Hanover in the Northern Cape, who doesn't have a post office? Or what about Klipsonderwater? Sipho says, yes, the department must run it itself, because it seems people are failing to be trusted. These are some of your comments coming through. I would like to get your thoughts on it. Let's go over to Kendall Makramate to find out what else is there. In fact, no, we'll come back to Kendall. There's another interview waiting for us. Trade union Nehawu will embark on a 3-day strike as from today to demand that the Social Development Minister, Batabile Dlamini, step down. The strike by 6,000 workers came on the back of the current debacle on whether Sasa will be able to pay the social grants by April the 1st. The strike affects employees in the Department of Social Development and does not involve Sasa. Over the weekend, the Labour Federation, Cosatu, staged a protest march on Parliament against the handling of the social grants saga. Cosatu's parliamentary coordinator, Matthew Parks, now joins us from our SABC parliamentary studios in Cape Town. Mr. Parks, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Now, as Cosatu, what do you make of the arguments yesterday at the Constitutional Court on the payments of social grants on the 1st of April?
We're very pleased with the discussion at the Constitutional Court. It basically has been validating what we've been saying, what civil society has been saying, the public at large. We're in a crisis. It's a disgrace. It's a huge shame on us as a movement, as an alliance. So we're really hoping the Constitutional Court can assist in saving the nation from this unenforced, self-created crisis by the Minister of Social Development.
Why do you call it self-created?
Well, they've had a contract for 5 years. They knew within 5 years there's an end date to the contract. They made no plan to deal with it. They were told 3 years ago by the highest court in the land, the Constitutional Court, that they must make a plan to end this illegal contract after 3 years, build the capacity in the state to deal with the social grants. And they did nothing. We don't believe they did nothing by accident. We believe they did nothing on purpose. And basically, they put us in a situation where at 5 minutes to midnight, as a nation, we're now in a crisis, which was unwarranted. They could have planned simply properly for 5 years, but they refused to do that for various obvious reasons.
As Cosatu, you're also deeply concerned that the minister do not see a crisis. We heard earlier when Rome was burning, nobody paid attention. Now, in this matter, but the Chief Justice said something contrary to what she believes yesterday. Your thoughts on that?
Sure. Look, it's very difficult to take anything the Minister of Social Development says seriously. It's full of factual mistakes. It's full of lies. She's not sensitive to the plight of our most vulnerable citizens. Her response has been to attack people who criticize her, to shift responsibility, to deny there's a crisis. Yet we're literally less than 2 weeks away from the 1st of April. There is no signed contract in place. The company is saying, well, if they don't sign it by today, they're not physically able to do the processes for the payments. Half of our nation depends upon these social grants, the most vulnerable people. And yet we have this minister who is more worried about ANC palace politics than dealing with her core function, which is to deliver social grants. And it's a very simple function. Yet she's behaving like a bull in a china shop. She's reckless, she's arrogant. She has not even uttered the simple sentence that she is sorry for the crisis she's put the entire nation in. Instead, she insults people left and right who dare to raise valid concerns of the public.
But if the minister steps down, how is that going to help resolve the payment crisis on the 1st of April?
Sure. Look, a couple of things. One is that she's been an obstacle to dealing with this crisis. We've heard very alarming statements from the leadership of Sasa, from the Department of Social Development, the former CEO of Sasa, or the CEO of Sasa, the former DG of the department, saying the minister has interfered in good governance in Sasa and the department. She's been an obstacle for them sorting it out. We've seen the Ministerial task team identify a variety of feasible options within the state with the banks to deliver social grants smoothly. She's blocked and made this very difficult. It seems she is wedded to one company, CPS in particular, for very suspicious reasons. So the sooner she goes, the better. In fact, if she can be gone today, we'll believe that's a bonus. But also there's a problem in our cabinet of a lack of accountability, a lack of humility, of shame. When they blunder, they see nothing wrong with it. They just come with slogans to defend it. And we really need to see ourselves moving to a situation, a culture, where when ministers mess up and mess up badly, they must go. In departments, the ministers fire civil servants all the time because they make mistakes. Yet here, ministers seem to have indemnity for any consequences at all.
What do you make of the threat by CPS that if a contract is not signed today, then payments will not be made on the 1st of April? It will not be possible, they indicate.
Yeah, and it's a very worrying thing. And that we're really, as a nation, held with a gun to our head by the minister and by this CPS. We're told we must condone the extension of an illegal contract for an additional 6 months, a year, 2, 3 years. They're going to make a huge profit out of it. We don't know what kickbacks will be given in exchange to other persons. But it's a national crisis, it's a national disgrace. And as an alliance partner, we're deeply embarrassed by the conduct of our minister and by the conduct of government on this issue.
Now, Trade Union Nehawu will embark today on a 3-day strike to demand that the Social Development Minister step down. Will that perhaps reinforce your statement that the minister should step down at all cost?
Yes, and we're very glad Nehawu has taken that up. We encourage everybody to support them. She must go immediately. She doesn't even need to pack her bags, she must just go. And we're glad to see Nehawu as one of our key affiliates take up issues of workers on the ground. And it's not just this issue, there's also issues in the department about social workers not being paid, a variety of other crises. So we're glad they must do it. They must all strength to them, and we wish it success. And we're glad to see when our unions don't bend down for government ministers or government departments who mess up. We must be a fighting trade union federation, and our unions must fight on the ground on behalf of the members and on behalf of the public.
Tony Ehrenreich, your provincial secretary, says that members of the labour union are the ones who will bear the brunt of sharing their wages and social grant beneficiaries when they are deprived of their payments. Is that a true reflection of what will happen on the ground?
Yes, because look, with 1 out of 3 people being unemployed, it means on average each worker supports about 7 to 9 dependents. Their children, their partners, their grandparents, unemployed siblings. So there's a huge pressure upon the workforce. This is why we need to create jobs. But we've always been proud as an alliance partner of the social grants being delivered to 17 million people because it helps to save people from starvation, helps to give them a lift up from the poverty line. And this is what makes it so painful and scandalous that we have a minister who is so blasé about helping the poorest of the poor. This is, by the way, is the same minister who said 750 Rand is enough for people to live off of. Yet she sleeps in a hotel for 11,000 Rand a night. This is the same minister who is convicted of fraud, of defrauding Parliament of R250,000 Rand during the Travelgate scandal. So we really have a crisis of leadership in cabinet.
In closing, won't this particular standoff between your alliance partner, the African National Congress, will create a schism? And what lessons can South Africa take from this particular debacle?
Sure. Look, we're in alliance with the ANC because we're ANC members. We love the ANC. It's a revolutionary liberation movement. It helped free South Africa. It's progressive. It's biased towards the workers. But it doesn't mean as Cosatu we're going to turn a blind eye to wrongdoings, especially ones which are so disgraceful like this. We're independent. Cosatu consists of 17 independent unions of almost 2 million workers. So we'll say what workers feel. Our first loyalty is to our members. And when government messes up, we will say so very vocally. We're not going to to massage it with nice English words or flowers. And here is a prime example. And we really expect the leadership of government, of the ANC in particular, to show leadership, to say this minister is messed up and then she must go. It can't be that we turn a blind eye because we are friends or we're comrades, and yet people on the ground are suffering. And we've seen what happens when we ignore the anger of the ordinary voters on the ground. The ANC got a hiding in the local elections last year. We were obliterated across the urban areas. And we had hoped to see the ANC and the government leadership wake up to this warning signal from voters. Unfortunately, it seems our leadership, they prefer to behave like ostriches, put their head in the ground and ignore the anger of the workers. And if we continue this type of leadership until 2019, we're very worried that this might see the defeat of the ANC in the elections. So our plea is to Luthuli House to wake up, to stop being quiet on this crisis, to the president of the country to wake up and to deal with this crisis. We can't be told this is fine, we're making a mountain out of a molehill. This is a huge disgrace. It's a great pain to us as Cosatu, what our leadership is doing.
Well, Mr. Parks, I thank you so much for your time. That was Matthew Parks. Sure. Looking ahead to 2019, did you hear what he said? That was Cosatu's parliamentary coordinator, Matthew Parks. Now, this could actually have an impact, he says, on the 2019 elections. I was shocked when I heard that. What about you? Remaining with the Sasa saga, CPS warned yesterday that if there's no contract signed by the end of yesterday, the grant distribution on the 1st of April will be impossible. The question is, where does that leave us right now? Our reporter Eldrin St-Pierre spoke with the director of Net 1, Serge Bellamont, the subsidiary of CPS, for clarity.
We need approximately 3 to 4 days to have received the money for us to be able to handle all the cash components. So if you go back, it's 4 days before the 1st, right? Excluding weekends, of course, and public holidays, because banks are closed during those days. And then you're going to start working backwards in terms of when must Sasa transfer, that takes 2 days. When must Treasury transfer to Sasa, that takes a further 2 days. So you can work it backwards. As long as we have the money, at least 4 days before the 1st, 4 working days, then we would be able to pay on the 1st.
And what will push it to the 2nd and the 3rd?
It will push it to the 2nd and the 3rd if Sasa cannot transfer the money to us, which means that Sasa may not have received the money from Treasury, right? And if they don't get it from Treasury, they can't send it to Nedbank. If Nedbank doesn't get it, Nedbank can't send it to Greenrod, which means that, and it takes 2 days every time for banks to do money transfers, as you know. So Sasa is got an account with, in fact, ABSA. So ABSA will transfer to Nedbank. Nedbank will transfer to Greenrod Bank. That's already 4 days gone. We can't control those 4 days. If those days fall apart and become 5 or 6 days because there's a delay somewhere else, it's going to delay the 4 days that we have at the end of the period, which means that we won't then have enough time to pay on the 1st.
Just a final question, Mr. Sash, before I let you go. The argument that was in court around the amount, the new contract that has been, well, not signed, the drafted contract between yourselves and Sasa, the council indicated that it's a lump sum. Instead of doing calculation of per beneficiary, it is a lump sum. Why have you decided to go that route and not give an exact amount, that this is how much we want to charge per beneficiary? And is there any discrepancy compared to this amount and the previous amount?
There's a very simple reason for this. By doing it this way, we are ensuring that Sasa over the next 2 years will have the time and the flexibility to take over beneficiaries. Now, if they take over 1 million beneficiaries, I would be losing 1 million times whatever my fee is. Therefore, my profitability drops to the extent that by the time I've lost 20% of the beneficiary base, I'm not making a profit anymore. Right? Which means my infrastructure would still be utilized for absolutely no purpose whatsoever. Because remember that the whole contract was negotiated for 5 years, and it was negotiated on the pretense that we would be paying around 10 million people. Right? So we can't suddenly say, but now we've got the same infrastructure, but we can only pay 5. So we said, to make it flexible, let's make it a fixed fee per month, and Sasa can decide how many beneficiaries do they want to take and when do they want to take them. We believe that cost...
So that will be in the block basis?
100%. And that cost is what we call the cost of transition, and the cost of phase in and phase out. Someone has to pay for the privilege of actually coming in and replacing us. There has to be a cost. We can't simply say there's one beneficiary left and we've got the entire national infrastructure because we don't know where that beneficiary is going to be paid. It could go anywhere. So we're keeping all that running but we're getting 16 Rand 44. It just can't work that way.
Well, CPS's director, Serge Bellamont, speaking to our reporter, Aldrin St. on the details of its contract with Sasa. You heard it from Cosatu. It's a gun to our heads. Let's go over to Kendall with your sports news.
Elvis, thank you very much. Pretty unpalatable morning we've all had, especially after winning the toss and choosing to field first in the second test. The Proteas bowled host New Zealand out for 268 in under 80 overs. JP Duminy picked up the most scalps for South Africa, including that of the Black Caps anchor Henry Nicholls, who top scored the 118-run stand. Duminy ended the first innings with figures of 4 for 47. Now, in reply, South Africa wobbled their way to 24 for the loss of 2 wickets, as both openers Stephen Cook and Dean Elgar got out for cheap.
To go around the wicket to left-handers. Gone. Create a little bit of doubt.
Oh, that's close too. That's angling back and he's given him. Edge. Oh, some catch. They are on fire this morning, South Africa. What an absolutely fantastic grab from Quinton de Kock. Edge and gone, just like that. Playing it with.
Subcontinental. Oh, nicely, there's a stumping. Has he got him? De Kock has just run down the pitch.
Bowled him, got him. He snuck it between bat and pad, almost yorked him there.
Edged and taken. James Neesham safe, and Tim Southey is welcome back to Test cricket. Yeah, brilliant. Just the strike that New Zealand needed to get themselves back into this match. Tim Southey. Edge, taken, there we go. Neesham with the hands, and the job of de Gronholm works. Well, from New Zealand's perspective.
Well, let's hope that the Proteas get their jackboots on and actually do better on day 2. Now, on to football news, where the Absa Premiership teams managed to see off lower division sides in last night's 4 Nedbank Cup matches. In a 5-goal thriller, Platinum Stars beat Amazulu 3-2 at the Muruling Stadium in Rustenburg. And Mokhakoludingele's brace for Bidvest Wits knocked out Cape Town All Stars at the Athlone Stadium in Cape Town.
Bidvest Wits travelled to the mother city to square up against Cape Town All Stars. Botswana's superstar, Mokhakoludingele, who hasn't seen much action this season, was the hero as his goals sent the hosts packing. Ngele completed his brace just 2 minutes after opening his team's account.
Beautiful goal!
Chippa United were up against Witbank Spurs at the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium in Port Elizabeth. Then Malisela's men took the game to Spurs from the onset, and Captain Tamsanga Sangweni was unfortunate not to find the back of the net in the first half. Spurs also had a couple of chances of their own, only to be denied by Daniel Akpeyi in Chippa's goal. In the second half, Malisela had every reason to applaud his charges after a lovely interchange of passes from the enterprising Eastern Cape-based side.
Lovely running, beautiful goal, the shot being beautiful goal it is! They broke them down, all the way down! What play, what a key goal from Chippa!
And the SuperSport United couldn't have asked for a much better start to their match against Royal Eagles in Pietermaritzburg. The goal, however, did not deter the hosts as they took the game to the defending champions. And just before the half-hour mark, Nzwandile Dlamini got the Eagles back on level terms with a powerful shot.
Good effort here for Dlamini! The home fans will be excited. Nzwandile Dlamini.
But deep into the second half, Jeremy Broke headed home across from Onishmo Bashera to make it 2-1 to the visitors. United are through to the last 16 in their quest to defend the Nedbank Cup title they won in Polokwane last year. Mduduzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
Now, of course, we're expecting the draw for the last 16 shortly. Now, Atletico Madrid and AS Monaco completed the final 8 spots of the UEFA Champions League, as both of them booked their spots in the quarterfinals. Madrid qualified in a 4-2 aggregate after a 0-0 draw in the second leg, while Monaco had to come back from a first leg defeat to surprise and eliminate City.
In home second legs.
Manchester City's tactics on the day simply failed. Pep Guardiola went for an all-attack system, but that decision compromised his defense. They conceded 2 goals in the first half. Kylian Mbappe reduced the Etihad scoreline in the opening stages.
Back in by Bernardo Silva. Monaco take the early lead, and it's the wonder Kylian Mbappe.
The French defense was barely troubled before the break. Fabinho added the second on the stroke of halftime following a Benjamin Mendy cross.
Good work. 2-0. Fabinho.
Now the gap between the first and the second is there. So it's, you asked me why in the first half the gap between the first half and the second half is like this. It's the same question to me. It's the same one. But I try to convince them from after just finishing after Middlesbrough game and all the meetings we had these 2 or 3 days. Said guys, go there and try to attack and try to go to score goals. We did it in the second half. We did it a lot of games.
Monaco tried to defend the lead, but the strategy didn't work. After 71 minutes, Leroy Sané made a breakthrough.
Keepers powering it. Sané! One of the most important goals he'll ever score.
The home team didn't give in. They went straight back into attack. Team Bakayoko returned the advantage to his side with a powerful header from a free kick. That leveled the aggregate scores, giving them a win on away goals. In Spain, Atletico Madrid goalkeeper Jan Oblak saved the evening with an outstanding performance. He made a spectacular triple save midway through the second half to help Atletico draw 0-0 with Bayern Leverkusen.
Now here's the chance for Julian Brandt, and surely now Volland must go in. Oh, what a save from Oblak. Hernandez.
It's Atletico's 4th consecutive Champions League quarter-final.
Es un paso importante, solo un paso. Sí, muy importante.
It's an important step, but it's just a step. It's very important for the club, and there's always a feeling of enthusiasm, of hope. Regardless if you're on a good or bad moment physically or at the pitch, Champions League, it's always special.
Siempre la Champions es especial.
Leverkusen was trying to reach their last 8 for the first time since 2002. The German club was eliminated by Atletico at the same stage in a penalty shootout 2 seasons ago. SABC News.
Now, SAFA's 2022 vision of having national teams qualify for international tournaments is slowly becoming a reality, with the under-20 team Amajita having recently qualified for the FIFA Under-20 World Cup. But for our teams to do well and not be eliminated in the first round of tournaments, our players need international experience. Some of our players will get that experience when 5 junior teams compete against teams from other continents next week in the 2017 Future Champions Gauteng International Tournament.
The country's under-17 team took part in the 2015 FIFA World Cup in Chile but were knocked out in the first round. Both the under-23 team and Banyana Banyana suffered the same fate at this year's Olympic Games in Rio. It's believed tournaments like the Gauteng Future Champions can go a long way in rectifying that.
It is really, really important that to the success of our national teams. And we don't want to see our junior national teams just going to the World Cup and participating. We want to see them progress to the knockout stages and beyond.
It's a good opportunity for us to see how far we are as a nation, because you know that normally we struggle against international teams.
No less than 6 players in the under-20 junior national team, including star player Luther Singh, launched their careers at the tournament.
You look at the players that are playing now national under, that went to, let's not go far, the one that went to Chile. Some of them, they played, about 6 of them. Now I've got 8 of them that are playing now in the same team that is going to Korea. So what does it tell you? It tells you we're in the right track.
Defending champions Atletico Madrid are expected to face some stiff competition from a Nigerian junior team, Torino FC from Italy, and 5 local teams. Pessing Katwa, SABC News, Johannesburg.
I'll be chatting to the country representative in South Africa from La Liga, Antonio Barradas, in the next hour about that and a few other La Liga matters. Now, South Africa's Raven Klaasen and his American doubles partner Rajiv Ram have advanced to the semi-finals of the BNP Paribas tennis tournament at Indian Wells in California. The 6th seeds beat Serbs Novak Djokovic and Viktor Troicki in the quarterfinals. Second-seeded Djokovic's woes continued after being beaten in straight sets in the men's singles by Australian Nick Kyrgios. But 9th seed Roger Federer of Switzerland defeated 5th seeded Spaniard Rafael Nadal in a very rare clash in their quarter-final match.
15th seeded Kyrgios triumphed over Djokovic in the Acapulco quarterfinals 13 days ago. And following Djokovic's recent slump in form, the temperamental Aussie was determined to repeat this feat at Indian Wells. Kyrgios fired down 14 aces and was in exceptional form as he chased Djokovic around the court. He never faced a breakpoint and ultimately won the clash 6-3, 7-6 to go through to the last four, where he will face Swiss maestro Federer. Federer broke the Nadal serve in the opening game of the match and never looked back. There were glimpses of Nadal's brilliance in the clash, but Federer recorded a straightforward 6-2, 6-3 victory, his 13th in 36 outings against the Spaniard. Earlier, Japan's Kei Nishikori beat American Donald Young to go through to the semi-finals. The fourth seed advanced following a 6-2, 6-4 win and will play another American, Jack Sock, next. Liesl Zankel, SABC News.
And that's where we leave it with the sports and the show for this particular hour. We'll be back shortly, very few minutes, to bring you more news, top of the hour.
African activists are using social media to raise their concerns, and industries are now utilizing video games to target new customers.
Gamification in games is a less intrusive way of brands to tell people about their products and services.
The fourth industrial revolution is also fully underway, but are Africans contributing much to it?
The majority of our people are not even aware that we're going through the industrial revolution.
On Network, we have African technology and social media news. That's Network with Ms. Pumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
It's the final hour here on the Newsroom on this Thursday, the 16th of March, Jumbo Africa. I'm Elvis Preslin.
I'm Kendo Makamate.
We'll be with you until 12 o'clock. Now, today the focus is on the non-profit organization Black Sash, who approached the Constitutional Court to exercise oversight over the process to find a new payment provider to pay social grants. Now, the question that we posed to our viewers there this morning, Ken,
it's
actually based on that.
It's based on that, and considering that a lot of people were listening to the proceedings in court, we want to know from you, what do you make of the arguments in the Concourt yesterday?
So there's a couple of comments coming through. Let's take a look at what you have to say. This one coming from Ruth says, Concourt, they mustn't extend the contract of CPS at all. Sasa or the post office must take over.
I think it's the 13th hour now. It seems like it's going to be very difficult for CPS to be pushed out of the equation. Sipo says, sir, we as South Africans, we need answers. Action must be taken. We don't need delays. We don't need Oxford Dictionary. We need action.
Ole Boheng says, it seems like it is the end of the road for Minister, but the contract need an extension for South Africans. And Ole Boheng, that is so true. We need that extension in order to make that grant payments, eh?
Mzolisi Katleng. I said it right. Thank you, Mzolisi. He comes in with his comment as well, and seems like that comment has been taken away by Mzolisi. We do appreciate your thoughts on the matter, and will it be brought back?
Comment.
Thank you very much.
They've taken it away like a CPS contract almost.
Taken away, yes. He's not CPS, mind you. Well, we're also conducting this poll, and the poll is on the same matter.
183 votes in, Kendall. We're asking, should the Department of Social Development take the grant payments internally? 75% of you are saying yes, 25% are saying no. Let's take a look at what you have to say.
Mike Jim Kabela says, I see a disaster in South Africa. CPS should continue until they find a way to resolve the issue.
Well, that's exactly what the Concourt is looking for. Nkolisi says, there's the one that you needed to read.
Yes.
Sasa does have the capacity, as they have a network of offices across the country. Why not employ that strength? Hashtag Sasa. Well, if they did, then they should have done it, but they don't, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Dean Gala says, Newsroom, I just wish they'd paid this grant. Hashtag Sasa.
Slamulo says, yes, as much as we trust the South African Post Office to deliver our mails, we should also trust them with our social grants. These are some of your comments. You can keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue, but right now let's take a look at your news headlines. President Jacob Zuma will today answer oral questions in his first appearance in the National Assembly since his State of the Nation address. Cash Paymaster Services says it will need about 4 days to ensure that grant distributions are paid on the 1st of April. Remember, before it was 12 days, now we hear 4. Wonder what's going on. And Judge Peter Mabuza has postponed the case between former Prasa chairperson Popo Molefe and the Transport Minister Defoe Peters. Those are all your headlines. Before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall what's happening on the sports front.
Thank you very much, Elvis. It's been a very busy morning already, and this is what we've got for you coming up in the sports later on.
Edge, taken, there we go.
The Proteas throw away their early advantage in Wellington as both openers, Stephen Cook and Dean Elgar, go out on the cheap. And the title holder SuperSport United survive an almighty scare against NFT side Royal Eagles to advance in this season's edition of the Nedbank Cup.
It's from Brockido. Freedom and allowed to get in the header from Bethlehem Tembu.
And in towards Bakayoko! It spins again!
Monaco caused the upset of the night as they overturn a 2-goal deficit to knock Manchester City out of the UEFA Champions League. All this and more is what's been happening in sports. I'll also be chatting to Antonio Barradas, the country representative for La Liga, at 11:35. Be sure to stick around for that. But before we get to any of that, let me bring you the top news stories of the day. President Jacob Zuma will this afternoon answer oral questions in the National Assembly. It will be President Zuma's first appearance in the House since the State of the Nation address in February. Only the ANC, the DA, the IFP and NFP have been allocated the 6 written questions. Other parties will get an opportunity when it's time for follow-up questions. Following calls for Social Development Minister Bathabile Dlamini to be fired during a snap debate on the social grant payment saga, President Zuma has been asked what he plans to do about her. Now, lawyers have proposed that the invalid contract of the Social Development Department with Cash Paymaster Services be extended. This is so that grant beneficiaries can be paid on the 1st of next month. The non-profit organization Black Sash approached the Constitutional Court to exercise oversight over the process to find a new payment provider. Yesterday, a full bench of justices heard arguments proposing the extension. Social Development Minister Bathabile Dlamini and the SA Social Security Agency, or Sasa, came under fire in the courtroom. Meanwhile, Cash Paymaster Services says today is the latest that any social grant deal can be concluded.
This is a crisis. We must do whatever is necessary to intervene to avoid the proliferation of the crisis.
The state of affairs has never been any clearer. Even the state attorney argued that the sense of crisis is real. Sasa knew since April last year that a storm was coming, while the justices found it baffling that the minister didn't seek to rectify this or inform the court.
Given the somewhat disobedience that we have seen in the past in relation to these matters, the orders and directions not being complied with, would it be appropriate to consider factoring in the rule NISA, calling upon the minister and everybody concerned to show cause why they should not be held in contempt?
But it was the showdown between the justices and the counsel for the minister at Sasa which left many questions.
What explanation do we have from the minister appreciating the enormity of her responsibilities, her constitutional responsibilities, to say, this is what happened, this is the briefing that I have insisted on, this was my understanding of the progress made, and this is how I sought to make sure that there isn't a repeat of what happened before.
I can make no submissions on that because the papers do not reveal anything in that connection. When I urged with respect, caution on the court in this regard, is that an inference to be drawn from the absence of information about that, and I accept that it is an inference which could be drawn, is that the minister was utterly supine, which is the implication of the line of questions being put to me. But it is not the only inference. The minister was asked when she became aware that Sasa would not be able to pay by the end of March, and she answered that question. The answer was given in Dr. Magasela's affidavit, and she confirmed the correctness of that affidavit.
The post office disputed that only CPS can offer the service. The company insists that it is complex and has asked the court order that the draft contract, which has increased fees, be signed. A judgment has been reserved.
Now, remaining with that Sasa saga, CPS warned yesterday that if there's no contract signed by the end of the day yesterday, the grant distribution on the 1st of April would be impossible. The question is, where does that leave us right now? Our reporter Adrian Sampier spoke with the director of Net1, Serge Bellamont, the subsidiary of CPS, to get some clarity.
We need approximately 3 to 4 days to have received the money for us to be able to handle all the cash components. So if you go back, it's 4 days before the 1st, right? Excluding weekends, of course, and public holidays, because banks are closed during those days. And then you've got to start working backwards in terms of when must Sasa transfer, that takes 2 days. When must Treasury transfer to Sasa, that takes a further 2 days. So you can work it backwards. As long as we have the money, at least 4 days before the 1st, 4 working days, then we would be able to pay on the 1st.
And what will push it to the 2nd and the 3rd?
It will push it to the 2nd and the 3rd if Sasa cannot transfer the money to us, which means that Sasa may not have received the money from Treasury, right? And if they don't get it from Treasury, they can't send it to Nedbank. If Nedbank doesn't get it, Nedbank can't send it to Greenrod, which means that, and it takes 2 days every time for banks to do money transfers, as you know. So Sasa is got an account with, in fact, ABSA. So ABSA will transfer to Nedbank. Nedbank will transfer to Greenrod Bank. That's already 4 days gone. We can't control those 4 days. If those days fall apart and become 5 or 6 days because there's a delay somewhere else, it's going to delay the 4 days that we have at the end of the period, which means that we won't then have enough time to pay on the 1st.
Just a final question, Mr. Sash, before I let you go. The argument that was in court around the amount, the new contract that has been, well, not signed, the drafted contract between yourselves and Sasa, the council indicated that it's a lump sum instead of doing calculation of per beneficiary. It is a lump sum. Why have you decided to go that route and not give an exact amount that this is how much we want to charge per beneficiary? And is there any discrepancy compared to this amount and the previous amount?
There's a very simple reason for this. By doing it this way, we are ensuring that Sasa over the next 2 years will have the time and the flexibility to take over beneficiaries. Now, if they take over 1 million beneficiaries, I would be losing 1 million times whatever my fee is. Therefore, my profitability drops to the extent that by the time I've lost 20% of the beneficiary base, I'm not making a profit anymore. Right? Which means my infrastructure would still be utilized for absolutely no purpose whatsoever. Because remember that the whole contract was negotiated for 5 years, and it was negotiated on the pretense that we would be paying around 10 million people. Right? So we can't suddenly say, but now we've got the same infrastructure, but we can only pay 5. So we said, to make it flexible, let's make it a fixed fee per month, and Sasa can decide how many beneficiaries do they want to take and when do they want to take them. We believe that cost...
So that will be in the block basis?
100%. And that cost is what we call the cost of transition, and the cost of phase in and phase out. Someone has to pay for the privilege of actually coming in and replacing us. There has to be a cost. We can't simply say there's one beneficiary left and we've got the entire national infrastructure because we don't know where that beneficiary is going to be paid. It could go anywhere. So we're keeping all that running, but we're getting 16 Rand 44. It just can't work that way.
That was CPS Director Serge Bellamont speaking to our reporter Adrian Sampier on the details of their contract with Sasa. That's currently being heard in the Constitutional Court. You heard him. He called it a privilege to replace them. Moving on to other news, Constitutional Court judges were left frustrated yesterday after Social Security Agency and Cash Paymaster Services representatives failed to answer key questions about the social grants payments debacle. Non-governmental organisation Black Sash and other organisations brought the matter to court to seek its intervention into the matter. Civil society group Freedom Under Law joined the Constitutional Court application by Black Sash regarding the distribution of social grants. Earlier, SABC News spoke to retired Constitutional Court Judge Johan Krichler.
The avenues, as an outside observer, the avenues seem to be fairly limited. The delay on the part of the minister and Sasa, the culpable delay on their part, has left themselves and the court with very little option. Quite clearly, for now, to ensure that the many millions who are entitled to the support get their support as of the 1st of April, leaves little choice but to continue with CPS for some time. For how long and on what terms, that's the debate.
Now, as Freedom Under Law joined the Constitutional Court application by Black Sash, what are they actually seeking?
We seek well, first of all, we want to establish the integrity of court orders and court discipline. The separation of powers depends upon the executive obeying and respecting the authority of the courts within their own area. In this particular instance, it was clear to us that the ministry and the agency responsible for the execution of this vital social function had been in disregard, if not contempt, of the Constitutional Court's ruling years ago. And we wanted to ensure that the court's authority was recognized by the executive. In particular, we wanted to ensure that no renewal extension of the contract would benefit CPS, that an unlawful contract which has, by force of circumstances, had to be renewed would not be beneficial to them. How the court does that is for the court to decide, but we wish to ensure that obedience to the court's order was enforced and that nobody could force you and me and the public at large to pay more because people had dragged their feet in a deliberately dilatory manner.
Oversight to the court was mentioned a number of times yesterday. Why is oversight of the Constitutional Court so critical in this regard?
Ordinarily, oversight by a court should not be necessary. A court gives an order, it's heard the case, it gives an order, and it can accept that what it has ordered will be done. In this particular instance, it's manifest, painfully manifest, that the minister and the state agency responsible did not take the court's attitude back in 2014 seriously and disregarded it. It does not seem as if the deal between the minister and Sasa and CPS is going to be a proper order unless the court has a close look at it and is exercising a supervisory function, either personally or through an agency which it nominates.
We talked about avenues a little bit earlier, and you indicated it's very limited what the court can do. Now, the Concourt did rule, that the previous contract or the current contract, which ends at the end of this month, is unlawful.
Yes.
Can the court now rule against itself?
No, it cannot. But what it did last time was to say, although this contract was concluded unlawfully and as unconstitutional, in the public interest and in the interests of justice, we cannot summarily terminate this contract. We must allow it to run its course to its conclusion. That is, in a sense, accepting the inevitable, that you've got to live with the unlawful in the meantime. I strongly suspect that whatever the court devises now will have to be something along the same lines. Reluctantly, unwillingly, in the knowledge that this contract should long since have been replaced, we've just got to recognize that CPS is going to be the agency for some time still.
Will this set a precedent, you think, Judge?
I think it will set a precedent in this respect. I sincerely hope it will set a precedent in this respect to show that court orders are not to be toyed with, court orders are to be obeyed.
Judgment has now been reserved. What are your expectations for grants to be paid on the 1st of April, and leaving those beneficiaries at ease this morning to say, listen, we will get paid? Because the President did announce that it will be paid, come hell or high water.
Yes, I'm not that much impressed by the President's statements. I'm much more impressed by what happened in court yesterday. I am absolutely convinced that the millions of people out there who depended upon these grants can sleep peacefully and comfortably. Their payments will be continued at the end of the month as in the past. There is no reason to fear that. There is every reason to think that the court will come up with some system of supervised execution of the contract as of 1st of April.
Is there anybody that should be held responsible for this crisis, you think, Judge?
That's one of the things the court is investigating. The court asked some very pertinent questions both before the hearing and during the hearing, and I don't want to transgress on the court's terrain, but purely as an outsider observer, somebody wasn't doing their job here. Who it was and why is for the court to determine.
Right now, from one embattled state-owned enterprise to another, the High Court in Pretoria is expected to hear an urgent application this morning by the former directors and chairperson of the Prasa board, Bopo Molefe, to set aside the decision of Transport Minister Dipuo Peters to dissolve the board. Molefe's legal team is expected to argue that the minister's appointment of an interim board is unlawful and preempts the outcome of the case. Bopo Molefe's lawyers wrote a letter to the Minister of Transport asking her not to appoint an interim board. However, on Monday, the minister announced the names of the new board members. She cited lack of good corporate governance and the recent public spat between the board and the former acting CEO, Collins Letswalo, as part of her reason to fire Molefe and other directors. Letswalo's lawyers have now applied to be part of today's proceedings and will ask the court to allow their client to be a respondent in the matter. The legal team representing Molefe is expected to oppose this move. And Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe is today expected to officiate at the launch of cement factory PPC in the Sasa area outside Harare. This will be the veteran leader's second public appearance this week. Yesterday, Mugabe chaired the ZANU-PF Politburo at the party's headquarters in Harare. He is expected to leave for Swaziland, where he'll attend the SADC Head of State and Government meetings on Friday. Mugabe will later travel to Mauritius, who is expected at the African Union Foundation Heads of State Conference on the continent, economic and political stability. And in international news, a federal court in Hawaii has blocked President Donald Trump's revised travel ban just hours before it was due to go into effect. Trump reacted by vowing to fight the ruling, describing it as judicial overreach. Judge Derek Watson issued a nationwide temporary restraining order against the ban on refugees and nationals from 6 Muslim-majority countries. He said it would cause irreparable injury were it to go ahead. 2 other courts in the United States are expected to rule on challenges to the travel ban in the coming hours. Now, in news just in, Judge Peter Mabuse has decided to stand down the matter between former Prasa chairperson Bopo Molefe and Transport Minister Dipuo Peters. Senior counsel David Unterhalter, who is representing Molefe, has asked for the matter to be heard tomorrow, as he still has to file an answering affidavit to former CEO Collins Letswalo's intervention application and reply to the minister. Molefe filed an urgent application asking the court to set aside the decision by Peters to dissolve the board. And now back to Elvis for an in-depth look at other news making headlines.
Thank you, Kendall. Now, despite the fact that the use of generic medicine has increased over time, many healthcare practitioners in South Africa continue to prescribe expensive brand name medication when cheaper generic alternatives are available. Now, this is costing the South African economy around 4 billion rand a year. Now, to talk to us about this issue, we're joined by Eric Roos. He's the CEO of Pharma Dynamics. He's at our Sea Point studios in Cape Town. Mr. Roos, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning, Elvis. Thank you for having me.
First and foremost, let's take a look at this matter. How much money could doctors be saving the South African economy if they change their prescription habits to a more generic-centered approach, you think?
Elvis, the company called Midday conducted a survey in the 2015 period, and they published a document to the medical fraternity indicating the savings that can be derived in the healthcare system. Midday's analysis, just to take one step back, Midday is a pharmacy benefit manager. They administer funds on behalf of medical schemes across various schemes in South Africa. This data confirmed that if more generics are utilized, it can contribute to a saving of about 4 billion rand per annum. That analysis, just to put it into perspective, if you look at the current molecules registered in South Africa across all therapeutic areas, 78% of those molecules are genericized, so there's generic alternatives available, yet the utilization of generics in that pool of products is only 60%. The analysis confirmed if you increase generic utilization then by 15%, which will be on par with global standards, that can equate to the 4 billion rand additional saving in the healthcare system.
Now, that's a huge saving, but what are then some of the reasons that doctors still prescribe expensive brand name medication when these cheaper generic alternatives are available?
Elvis, the generic association that Pharma Dynamics, the company that I'm leading, belong to, we're doing a lot of focus educational programs at the healthcare practitioners to assure them of the safety and efficacy of generics. Generics has been in South Africa for more than 2 decades with a proven track record. It's affordable, effective alternatives to the brand names. Traditionally, once the patent of a brand name generic originator expires, the generics will launch products. So it's a slow uptake and it's a lot of education that needs to happen at healthcare practitioner level to ensure them that there's alternative available to broaden the access of life-saving medicine across the broader population. So it's a slow process, but we're gaining traction and it's increased. Currently, the utilization in South Africa is about 56 to 60%, as I said earlier, and we're all aiming to drive that to the 80% mark with educational programs and investments at the healthcare practitioner level in South Africa.
Is there a difference between generic medication and original medication?
Elvis, a generic medicine is pharmaceutically equivalent to the originator once it's registered. That's regulated by the Medicines Control Council. In other words, the active pharmaceutical ingredient needs to be proven the same as a branded product. Then the second aspect is you need to comply, or the regulator will ensure that the product is effective, safe, and are subject to the same quality standards, quality testing than a brand name. Mm-hmm. So in answering that, it's equivalent, it's proven to be as effective and safe. And that's all regulated by our MCC. That's very active in assuring quality of products in South Africa.
So if it is the same, exact same medication, why are the generic medications then cheaper than the original brand?
Elvis, it's driven by competition. There's always more than one generic alternative available in a marketplace. Once the generics are launched, there's natural competition. That means the price point will come down generally, so it makes it more accessible to the broader population. And of course, your branded companies do conduct more research up front, and they need to recoup their investments. But once that product is off patent and the generics come in, the price point shifts, and the difference can be anything from 50 to 80% more affordable than a brand name originator product.
Well, that's a huge difference. I mean, 50% more or less than your original product. So aren't South African pharmacies then obliged by law to offer patients that generic alternative to save us money?
Absolutely, Elvis. It's a regulation that's been passed 9 years ago. By law, a pharmacist should offer a generic alternative to a product that's genericized or a brand name product, to put it in other words, that's off patent. That is law, to make that choice available to the consumer.
So how much is then spent in medicine in South Africa annually? Let's just go back to that numbers for me to understand. And what percentage of this is now spent on generic medication?
The pharmaceutical spend in the previous year was 42 billion. That's spent, and that's across public and private sector. As we know in South Africa, the private sector consumes most of that value that I just quoted, and 56% of that is currently on generic utilization.
Mm-hmm. Now, how do we change this, Eric? Because it seems like there's also perhaps cross-subsidization as well as, what do they call it, kickbacks within the industry?
Elvis, I think the solution to this is definitely to have a holistic approach and partnerships, alliances across the industry with all the role players involving the DOH, the healthcare funders, the pharmaceutical companies like Pharmadynamics and our partners, the healthcare practitioners, the endpoint users, and the consumers from educational perspective, from really attacking this issue with healthcare to ensure we can make more effective, affordable products available to the broader population. Those savings, it's an interesting point, if these savings can be plowed back into the consumer's hands by means of medical aids, maybe slowing down on the increases that's been way above inflation year on year. Some of those savings can be applied elsewhere through medical aids to benefit their members with other healthcare investments or needs. So a holistic approach is the solution, and obviously the investment from pharmaceutical companies, especially generic companies, with regards to educating the healthcare practitioner segment and forming alliances and partnerships to address the issue of broader access.
Mr. Prasa, thank you so much. Finally, just in 10 seconds, so what's your advice to consumers? What should they ask for?
Consumers should ask for a quality, affordable generic. It's well proven. They need to ask for education. There's a lot of education available that's been made available by generic companies to understand the real efficacy and quality of a generic product.
I thank you so much for your time. That was Eric Ruiz. He's the CEO of Pharmadynamics. So there you have it. That advice, go and ask for a generic. Don't just go for the original. It's just as good. Now today, in fact, on Wednesday, it was World Consumer Rights Day, a day to promote the basic rights of consumers, to demand that those rights are respected and to protect the market abuses and social injustices which undermines them. Now, for more on this, we earlier this week spoke to the Credit Ombud, Nikki Lala Mohan, who explained the significance of World Consumer Rights Day.
It was President John F. Kennedy that came up with this World Consumer Rights Day. And that was on the 15th of March, 1962. And basically what he said is that at the end of the day, he said, we are all consumers. We are one that affect and also get affected by economic decisions of both private and public institutions. But yet, we are the one that has the least voice. Nobody hears us. So it's through that they lifted that to say, but on World Consumer Rights Day, you need to exercise your rights, but not only on that day, but forevermore. But it's a day to celebrate your consumer rights.
Now, we normally hear the slogan, the customer is always right. But sometimes the customer don't know their rights and the consumer don't know that. What are some of the key consumer rights that customers and consumers should know?
Look, there are various ones, and there are those that are in the credit landscape. There are those in the consumer goods landscape in terms of the Consumer Protection Act. But let's look at the credit landscape. And one basic right is the right to receive a statement. Now, we take that one so much for granted. We take it for granted that even when we read the statement, or when we get the statement, we don't even open it up. We throw it away. But the right to receive a statement is fundamental.
Yes.
And those people that are not providing you a statement are hiding something away from you. We had an incident in our report and where we did in our press release, where this consumer did not receive statements. And the reason why he didn't receive the statements is that had he received the statements, he would have seen that he was being overcharged on interest, on initiation fees, etc. So he came to our office. The incident was a 6-month loan that he took out. He'd lost his job. He managed to make 3 payments. The one payment was effected on time, but they did not acknowledge that payment. And then they started harassing him, debt collectors, this, that, and the other. Office intervened, we looked at the situation, we saw that this gentleman had complied with all his contractual obligations. And the other side was mischievous in that they did not want to provide him with that because they knew that there were additional costs. And that's where they begin to make their money. So that's one in the credit space. The other one is your right to know why you're being refused credit.
Yeah, because people sometimes don't know. I mean,
they don't know.
Yes.
Because there's a positive to that. Because if you are told that you cannot qualify for this loan because of affordability, because of there may be something on the bureau, on the credit bureau that affects your credit rating, you can take positive steps to fix that up. Especially the bureau one, to say, but why am I on the bureau? Check it out, or let's rectify it, get a paid up letter, etc. The other one is that you cannot discriminate against granting credit. Pure discrimination in terms of, as in the past, of color and that is totally gone.
It must be based on affordability.
It must be based on affordability, but at the same time, there is, on the discrimination side, there is a corollary that you can't discriminate against a 70-year-old that's applying for a 30-year bond.
Yes.
You understand? Now, it's justifiable discrimination. But other than that, you know, so you have the right to, and you have the right to apply for credit, basically. It's your basic right that part of the economic system is that you have the right to apply for credit.
But if you don't have a job, that would make it very difficult.
Absolutely, it would make it very difficult, especially now with our affordability laws, etc. So if you move, that's the credit market. But let's move to consumer goods.
Yes.
The right to a safety product, a safe and reliable product. Especially if we take the current case of the Ford Cougar.
Yes.
The consumer has a right to have a product that is safe. And by these things blowing up everywhere, it's not safe. So your right is being infringed. So, you know, there's those space in the consumer market, and then there's also those in the credit market. So the consumer has rights in respect of every economic activity that they undertake.
I just want to stuck quickly on the Ford Cougar issue. How far are you with that particular case?
Look, it's not within my domain because it's a credit. It's with the National Consumer Commission, and from an ombudsman point of view, would be the motor vehicle ombuds. But you know, following the press, etc., there's been that recall. There's been asked for people to go, but we hear some of them still going on. There's been a sad story I read recently where Ford had agreed to give them courtesy cars or hired cars, and then you get a bill for 30,000 rand. You know, that's much more than the installment and everything, your entire salary for some people. So, but I think they fixed that up in terms of saying, no, it wasn't meant to be that way or whatever. But it's just a marketing disaster, basically.
Now, as you indicated, it is a big market when it comes to consumer as well as credit, and there are significant things that consumers sometimes don't know, such as the garnishee orders, the reckless lending, affordability assessments, and identity fraud. Which are some of the things that your office have received that you need to pay attention to?
Garnishes has been big in the past, but it's dropped now since that Stellenbosch case, which made it illegal to obtain a garnishee in an area where you don't reside and work. So that one's dropped down. We still get a lot of reckless lending. We still get a lot of documentation not received. We still get a lot on incorrect interest calculations. So, you know, the general terms of the contract, the theme is constant in terms of prescription, documentation. Garnishes used to be top of that, but what we're finding now is the simple not receiving a document is taking precedence. More and more companies are not providing a statement of account.
Mr. Moyan, finally, some advice to consumers out there?
Well, you know, you have the right, exercise the right, don't be fearful. I think people are scared because of the power dynamics. But as a consumer, you also have power, and you need to exercise that power.
Where can they get hold of the credit
They can
ombudsman?
you can get hold of us, and it's simple. I always promote our SMS line, 44786. Just send us an SMS, call help, we call you back. And it's because sometimes the conversation is a lengthy one, documentation, it costs you money, we'll pick up the tab for that.
Sir, I thank you so much for your time and joining us here.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
That was the Credit Ombudsman, Nikki Lala Mohan. Give them a call, that number again. That's the SMS line, 44786, and they will call you back.
A top 5 rated horse racing event in the world, fashion is a highlight for those in attendance. All decked out in blue and white, the Lomorians Queen Plate is the premier event that kicked off everyone's social calendar.
That it was all part of my master plan to cast John Legend but deprive him of his normal instrument and give that one to Ryan.
The House of Truth is not just a name. It is a religion. It is a lifestyle. It is a conviction that drives us.
What really excites me is how people have kept it very simple and also played with the theme, and how each person has interpreted it in their own way.
To stay updated with all the current entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
Welcome back. As I've promised the entire morning, in 2015, Spanish Football League La Liga saw the opening of its first offices on the African continent in Johannesburg. This is part of this strategy of internationalization, oh, that's a difficult word, isn't it? Of making football international, making Spanish football international. The aim is to extend La Liga's brand into Africa by approaching fervent African followers of the league. Now, La Liga has since opened offices in other African nations such as Kenya, Nigeria, and Zambia. The organization has also ventured to support grassroots football tournaments such as the KwaMahlobo Games. With me in studio today is a La Liga representative and actually the director for Africa, Antonio Barradas. Antonio, that was a bit of a mouthful for me, but I'm certainly hoping that our conversation is going to go a lot easier on me. Thank you very much for having come in.
Thank you very much, Kendall. That's whatever it's to be done, we will do it. We'll talk about it. What La Liga is here in Africa, what La Liga wants to do in Africa. Yeah. And I must tell you, La Liga is here in Africa to stay. It's not to come over here and just do something and disappear. La Liga is here to stay.
And that's very good. I'm glad that you started with that because we're quite keen to find out what. I mean, La Liga came in with quite a lot of fanfare about a year and a half ago. We had the president of La Liga here as well. We had you around, and it was a lot of fanfare and a lot of promises made about what La Liga wanted to do once it arrived. It's been a year and a half.
Yes.
How far have you gone down that road of achieving your goals?
Well, basically, when we started, we did the Moksobo Games, which was first we did it in Cape Town, the public viewing, right? Then we did the public viewing as well in Mandela Square. But our biggest event it was done, Moksobo Games was done in Soweto. Mm-hmm. To give you an idea, we had there, it was over Christmas. We had in the finals we had 23,000 people watching the Homer Global Games in Soweto. So what we're doing is basically doing things which is we're going into the grassroots, we're going in where the people the most need it. Over here, since you said we've been 1.5 years ago, we took time, we imported now 30,000 soccer balls to give away. We're going to work with the foundations. We're giving to Ramaphosa Foundation, to Mandela Foundation. We give in to the minister. We're going to present 10,000 soccer balls to the minister very, very soon. With that, when we give those soccer balls, we will bring trainers from Spain to train the trainers over here at the school level.
Yes.
We're going to, whatever we're going to do it at grassroots levels. We're going to do it to basically, we're looking at the younger generation to work.
Well, talking about that, I mean, right now our viewers are seeing images of the El Clasico event that you had, because I think that was one of the first things that popped into people's mind when they hear that La Liga is coming to South Africa. They're going to open offices here. We're going to become that much closer to the Real Madrids, to the Barcelonas, and the El Clasico. This event was in December, and what we're looking at is time lapse of the preparation for that particular event. How did that go for you?
Well, it went good. It's obviously but it went very good. We got a lot of coverage. We got a lot of sponsors. At least the people now we La Liga is here obviously to stay. We had to do things with, especially with grassroots level, at school levels. We are to, we just brought that up just to show La Liga is here in Africa. And that's how we did it, and then we go step by step and make it happen.
Well, here's the thing that's quite key for me to find out from you since you're here is the last time we had a South African player playing in La Liga was in 2010, 2009 to 2010, Nassif Morris. And since then, there's been absolutely nobody from South Africa, whereas you've got players from other parts of them. You've got Morocco, you've got Nigeria, Ghana, Ivory Coast. Surely you would have been thinking of starting there first, or is this something else that La Liga gets from starting here?
You see, La Liga is not into to transfer players, to do the transfer of players. La Liga is over here to go into the grassroots, and really, I personally think in 10 years' time, the way we're starting now with the grassroots, with the kids of 6, 7 years old, there's going to be academies. It's going to be academies, some Liga academies going through Africa, and that's where we're going to get the future champions. Because at the moment, I must be honest with you, we have very little South African players playing in Spain or in Europe, for that matter. Very, very, very little in comparison to the other countries.
Of course, we had Marsilia as well playing in La Liga. Now, let's try and get a quick understanding of your footballing background. I mean, is it based in Europe? Is it based in Africa? Where does your footballing background come from?
If I tell you, I was many years ago, I was the vice president of Lusitano. You weren't born as this. Yes, you weren't born as this, but of course the people of my age, they will remember Lusitano. We were the first club, white club at the time, to go and play in Soweto. We did at the time, we played, I met Kaiser Matau at the time, and Ivan Kwaza at the time, and when I actually met Ivan Kwaza, when I met, he says, "With you, I don't need introduction. I know you from Desdes." So so I've been involved. Although I'm representing the Spanish League in Africa, but that's why they put me over here, because I understand the football in Africa.
So you're not somebody from Europe coming here to come learn the African way of playing football, but you're actually a person who's been here all along, who knows what the African way of playing football is.
That's very true. That's very true.
All right, now the Future Champions International Tournament coming up shortly, very few days' time. Atletico Madrid will be defending their under-17 title. We saw what they did last night, that they've advanced, the senior team has advanced through to further on in the Champions League. When are we going to get more of that? Yes, we're getting the juniors, but we want to see if we can get the seniors as well. When are we going to have the LFP being played here?
Well, we will. You see, those clubs, for instance, like Atletico, Real Madrid, Barcelona, they have the agenda for 3-4 years in advance. When we tried, eventually we'll definitely get one of the top clubs coming over to play in South Africa. We're looking at bringing Malaga this year. Definitely, Malaga is going to come and do the preseason over here. We arranged for them to do preseason in Durban, and we'll do a game in Durban, and we'll do most probably a game in Cape Town. So that is, we bring in the clubs, which is it's more easy to bring them in, because Barcelona and Real Madrid and Atletico, they have the agenda. Have the agenda fully booked, but doesn't mean no one will be able to come. We will work on that, definitely.
100%, Antonio. I'm going to try and hold you to that over the next couple of years, because I really would like to see.
I would love to. I would definitely. I would love to bring the top team to really play over here with the South African.
And before
team.
Messi leaves Barcelona as well, please.
Yeah.
Here's a quick one. One of the things that I know that you're doing here, I mean, you're seeking talent. You want to secure talent before it gets too old, and before anybody else gets a jump on them, and maybe get them to play for a La Liga club. Yes, we believe that's one of the reasons why the league is actually opening up offices in Africa. Correct?
Yes. Look, for instance, now what are we doing? We brought in last year the under-17s, the Athletic Madrid. Yeah. They were unfortunately for me it was unfortunate because I would rather have a South African team being the champions. Then we could take some of those champions, some of those youngsters. We will give them a chance to come over to train in the clubs in Spain. Yeah. That is our plan, which is eventually to get the youngsters, which is they play under 17s at the moment, and then to get some of those players to go to have an opportunity to train in clubs in Spain and to be able to have champions, because the talent is here in Africa. I know the talent in Africa. The talent is here. What we really need. We need with La Liga. It's got something. It's got a model which is working. You know what? Now for the European championships. Now we got 3 Spanish teams out of 8. We got 3 Spanish teams.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what we doing? We tell us La Liga what's doing. La Liga wants to be near the fans as well. We got a huge amount of fans of Real Madrid, Barcelona, Athletic, Valencia, huge amount, and we want to be near. Yeah, we want to plant something, give something back to our fans, and that is one of the reasons we really, the president wanted us to open over here and be in Africa.
Here's one thing that stands out, though. Racism in European football is something. It's not something new. It's been in European football. Every so often we hear about something coming out of one country or the other, and La Liga in Spain is no exception to that rule. What is La Liga doing to stamp out racism against African players?
Well, you know what, we very much against that. La Liga is very strong, and as a matter of fact, if there's anything done, La Liga, I must be honest with you, our president is running La Liga, which is like a very professional business, and that is definitely is in our books. That is very much. We are definitely, with any racism on that, definitely that club, or that whatever they bring up, anything, that club gets really badly punished.
All right. Now, thank you so much for that. We're hoping that it really does stay that way, that it's taken through from as serious as you say it is, that they actually do punish the fans, the clubs, whoever it is that instigates racism against African players, because it is exciting. La Liga is extremely exciting. We all love watching it, and we're hoping to see it very soon on our shows and some of our players playing over there. Antonio Barradas, thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will definitely do our best from my part, definitely, and from the president's part, and especially very much in South Africa. Whatever I need, the president to come over and to do it, he's ready to come. He'll be here soon again. So he's becoming, since I've been here, he's been 3 times into South Africa, which most of the countries he hasn't been.
We've run out of time, sir, and we hope to see him here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Media Monitor. I'm your host, Alicia Jali. What has been happening on the digital front?
To win the CAF Championship was a huge thing, and perhaps we ought to have celebrated him even more.
Absolutely.
73% of our schools, regardless whether they're in the township or they're in urban areas, if you go to those schools, you are guaranteed a matric pass.
It is the one thing that we haven't done well as a country. We have thrown money at it. I mean, if you ask for figures, you'll be told we're spending well in education.
90 billion.
But the performance of the system has not been good enough.
When cell phones get cut off, people say Mdluli was listening. Who are you?
We have to approach Dennis Breitenbach, who was the prosecutor by then.
The DA parliamentarian?
That's correct. The one who was making halabaloo about me.
There are allegations here that you abused the slush fund. What do you say to that?
We don't have slush fund. I don't know about slush fund.
I respect the fact that you cannot talk a lot about the Secret Service and all that. I guess that's the norm internationally.
Yeah.
But how do we know that you, Richard Ndluli, are not abusing the funds of the state. You are counted amongst the president's men. Are you?
That is rubbish.
Also the matter of General Boysen in KZN. He's not speaking very well of you.
No, that one is talking rubbish.
You are perceived to be very powerful, General, and you know, people who don't agree with you seem to pay the price. What is happening with the old Paramribe case?
No, I'm surprised because, as I've said, I'm a person of people.